Is this on? It's on. This is the June 6th, 2023 regular meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District School Board, and the board met in closed session and took two actions. The board voted 5-0 to reject the liability claim, student versus PAUSD, LD 2223.01. And in closed session, the board voted yes on a student discipline case, SS 2223.03. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda order?
So moved. Second.
I have no student board members to ask. Colleagues, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. We've got our agenda order, and we are going to start with the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Earlier today, we announced several administrative moves after having multiple discussions with each of the administrators over a period of time. We're excited about the moves and expect each of our team members to thrive in their new settings. We've really started an era of stability across our entire system. And just reflecting back 6 years ago, I'm not sure that the district could have made these moves. Now we have depth and a succession plan that's benefiting our organization. I want to specifically thank our Management Association, PAMA, for their work throughout the year. I think for whatever reason, we just speak less about our administrators than the other groups, and I understand that, but they're certainly worthy of singling out and thanking. Like PAEA and CSEA, we meet each month. And I'm always impressed with their choice to advocate on behalf of students before themselves. It is one of the things I love about PAUSD, and I'm proud of each of them. Just quickly, the announcement went out to the entire district, all families, all staff members, but just to quickly hit on the four in these moves, Brittany will be going from Aloni into her first principalship at Duvenik. And while not every personnel matter that you touch is fun, some are really hard. There's nothing more fun than giving somebody their first opportunity and to get to watch their face, especially when it wasn't necessarily expected, to come in and have a conversation, then to be able to look at somebody and say, how would you like to be the next principal of fill in the blank, and in this case, Duvenik, and to see that face and to hear the promises and then to challenge people to stand up to what they promise it's just a high point. Marcella and I had conversations throughout the year about what's next. You know, she had long successful career as a principal and a leader, and has an amazing skill set. And we're excited about her next step in the journey to not only work here on very specific items, and if anything that we've learned from reading when we brought Danae here is when you have focus and you have good people and good leaders that can focus on something specific, you get great results. And that's going to happen again with Marcella with us. Leslie is going to be stepping over to Escondido, and another great challenge. And the deal with Leslie is she came to us as an already accomplished principal at multiple levels, and to have her go back to Escondido, which is a big, complicated school with dual immersion and construction and all these other things. But after being successful at Duvenik, to say, yeah, I want to do that, and to go over and take on another challenge really speaks to who she is as a leader. And then with Jose Sanchez from Fletcher, he's going to get an opportunity that will not only help us, but it's going to help him. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make this a place that you can grow with us. I still laugh when people tell the stories. Well, I laugh not because it's funny. I laugh and, wow, I can't believe that was ever said, that at one point in time, the message was here that if you wanted to promote, you needed to leave the district and then come back. You will never, ever hear us tell our best people to leave us for a minute. this is where you can grow and be a part of things. And Jose's done a great job at the middle school. He has a really eclectic background, but I'm excited about him working with not only Escondido, but also with Ohlone, and getting to help and learn from a newer principal with Elsa, who's got a year under her belt, and on the other side, to get to work with Leslie, along with the rest of the team. I think this is a really exciting time for our district, and I look around the room and I see, gosh, almost everybody in this room we got to place either in their current position or help them get to a different place as part of growth, and I think that is something that we should be celebrating. So that's it for me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have open forum, which Dr. Austin, I just want to clarify. At one point we had flipped staff reports first. No, but they follow open forum.
I'm sorry. Yes, we moved them to the front, and I think this is it's a little bit of a return to the way things were at one point in time, and our thought was, if I can just talk about the context for a second,
no, that's great.
The rationale. We would often have meetings where we would hear from people, we would touch a topic, and then we would not report on the things that were really the important work that we had before us in the district. So as an example tonight, well, all three are important, but the Title IX and Every Student Reads, if those were at the end of the agenda, we were often cutting or shortening these things that are really important work. So that's why we're trying to move it up again. And we maintained open forum prior to the reports because when I first started here, especially, there was a push to have a more consistent time for open forum. So that is why the order is the way it is. Again, not set in stone, but we're trying it tonight.
Okay, we'll see how it goes tonight, and agenda setting, we'll take it up after. Okay, then we're going to go on to open forum. There are, looks like about 20 speakers, so that will be a minute each. Again, I'm not going to go back to in-person Zoom alternating. I'm just going to call them in order that y'all called in, except students first. So we'll start with Matthew Gruppenhoff, then Ezra Furtado Tuori, and then Benjamin Vakil.
Okay, so I'm concerned about the current safety systems installed in schools because right now, most schools in PAUSD have these painfully loud fire alarms that just repeatedly beep. And I've seen these things tend to have negative effects on people's mental health. And they sometimes cause some bad behavior during an evacuation, like throwing stuff onto the roof. And there's another issue that actually came up recently at Gunn where we had some weather emergencies and the admins couldn't make PA announcements because the power went out. And if they used a voice system that uses the fire alarm wires, then they could possibly make announcements that way. And I think it's important to install a voice fire system in all of the PAUSD schools in all the older buildings in order to promote mental health and allow these emergency announcements to be made.
Thank you. Ezra, Benjamin, and then Stephen Davis. Then we're done with students.
Hi, everyone. Considering the recent communication about math-related issues in the district, we think that a committee formed by students, staff, and administrators would be beneficial. This group would allow each party to understand and take into account the opinions and concerns of the other parties without fear of miscommunication through large-scale announcements such as superintendent's updates or minute-long board speeches. Additionally, we think that the vague communication that has been sent out around issues is insufficient and does not address the questions of many parties involved. Mr. Leftwich, who voiced concerns about MVC at the previous board meeting, initially believed that the MVC course being offered at Pali was an asynchronous course offered directly through Foothill, and that Pali was just allowing students to use a classroom after school to work together on the assignments from the class. Only after meeting with him was I able to clarify that an instructor would be coming to teach the class in person. If staff members, students, and parents are all misguided by the communication sent out, it cannot be the fault of the community's lack of resilience or lack of information. We hope that the district will stop blaming community members for misinterpreting their statements and will instead make them clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Benjamin, Stephen Davis, Devin Ardeshna.
Hey, at the April 18th board meeting, I called for the establishment of a committee to, quote, advise on PAUSD math policy that puts students first. I would like to thank Ms. DiBrianza for helping us facilitate that discussion, or at least start to. However, there is still much, much more that needs to be done. So I am here to urge the board to action regarding math education, particularly the issue of multivariable calculus. It is true that there are very different opinions here between staff, students, and parents. And it is also true that that it's going to be very, very difficult to work through these, but that shouldn't stop anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Davis, Devin Ardeshna, Mark Vincenti.
Good evening. I have heard, as of course you all have, that there's been a Office of Civil Rights complaint filed against the district, and I've experienced one of these before. And I would make one request, which is that you have an independent persons do the investigation. Unfortunately, I will say in my previous experience with this, the administrative regs, which you guys probably know all about much better than I do, actually was very depressingly ambiguous as to allowing people to investigate themselves, as it were. The importance of this, regardless of the outcome, is that we focus on community trust, and a key part of that should be independence. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin, Mark, Emily Lee.
Hello. As a PAUSD alum, I want to reiterate the usefulness of MVC and lineage in many STEM fields. Take AI for an example, something that the district is very keen on. Well, these large models are trained using gradient information, and that is one of the key topics taught in multivariable calculus. So it makes total sense that kids want to take these courses because they can learn from a real instructor face-to-face versus having to go find these answers on YouTube. When the MVC offering at Pali was created 10 years ago by teachers like Judy Choi and the late Radu Toma, it was made for two reasons. One, to make the course more accessible, and two, to support students and help them pursue their learning. And so for several years, it was a mid-7th period start class, which means that kids were able to go home at a reasonable time or go pursue their extracurriculars. So, you know, it's really disappointing to come back to PAUSD and hear that site leadership no longer feels the need to support these kids, because to quote them, it's only a handful of students. You know, I was one of those kids, and I felt supported when I was here, and for that, I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, Emily Lee, Rowena Chu. There he is. Hi, Mark.
I taught at Gunn for 15 years, and my name is Mark Vincenti. This district has two simultaneous crises: demoralized teachers and demoralized students. A few months ago, the CDC reported that a record high 1 in 3 teenage girls had seriously considered suicide. And half of Palo Alto's 900 teachers in their latest survey declared their morale to be low or very low. And now the district will be adopting chatbots, foisting on our teachers another learning curve and more student plagiarism. In addition, our teachers must now receive extra training in how to de-escalate violent students and work with behavioral intervention coaches. Also, our teachers must learn to recognize fentanyl overdoses. Santa Clara County reports 135 fentanyl deaths in 2021. Finally, our teachers must rehearse shelter in place to anticipate active shooters, events for which teachers must consider sacrificing their lives. As a city that's already lost precious youth to great despair, we must take our situation seriously.
Please send your comments to board@pausd.org. Emily Lee, Rowena, and Sunny Paul.
According to the district, equity and wellness are key priorities. I'm here to ask Don Austin and the board to use these terms in a responsible way. How do we narrow the achievement gap? Do we do this by promoting a narrative that certain families are a vocal minority that impedes progress? Or do we address structural barriers to equity, such as a system that denies disabled students access to benefits that are available to non-disabled students? I think the answer is clear. Equity is tough work, and privileged people in power can benefit from listening to groups who've been underserved. I believe it will be difficult for the community to have respectful discussion on equity because of the divisive, misleading framing on this topic that I've seen from the superintendent and certain board members. Please listen to your community who are hurting, and use the terms equity and wellness with integrity. Lastly, equity is not a zero-sum game where creating opportunities for some prevents others from success. It is possible to provide pathways and supports for different types of learners while tackling systemic equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Rowena, Sunny, and Rika Yamamoto.
Hi, my name is Rowena Chu. I want to build on what Emily has said. We both came to speak about a similar issue, which is, again, the Ohlone Room 19 closure, which is the subject of a current OCR investigation, indeed a federal investigation. I'm here today because I want to advocate for choice. I really want to implore the board and the community in general to empower students with choice. I'm really moved by the high school maths students who are here tonight to speak about their choice in better maths. And I want to argue that for Ohlone Room 19 parents, that they should also be allowed the choice to stay at Ohlone or to move elsewhere. Choice means that we can have a more equitable world. The world outside of Palo Alto is rich and diverse, and I believe that true equity can be better achieved if we can give people choice across the spectrum. It gives them a richer, more rainbow world because we are all in ourselves diverse. We're many different colors. I can't talk about
Ms. Chu.
Thank you.
Good send words to board@pausd.org. Sunny Paul, Rika, Helene Grossman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sunny, and I wanted to take time to bring your attention to the Choice Program's ad hoc committee recommendations that were shared in the board meeting a couple of weeks back. There are about 5 pages, including 1 page for recommendation. In the charge statement, it states that prepare a summary report of each choice program, including historic enrollment numbers, representation, and measure of success. Identify strengths and opportunities for each program. While reviewing the report, I did not find any summary report that is stated in your own recommendation in the report. There is no findings, there is no data how the committee reached the recommendation. It's like a black box. There is nothing. It's just, last page has recommendations, how they reached it, how it was reached. There is no this thing. And I understand pretty senior folks in the board as well as school principals made this committee report. So I'm trying to understand,
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Rika, Helene, Edith Cohen.
Hi, everyone. PAC has surfaced 10 years of inclusion. To address the recent problem and continue robust inclusion, CAC recommends the district accomplish 1, positive and safe school environment for all. 2, training and support all district and school personnel. 3, student support and access to screening and intervention. Under the Individual with Disability Education Act, behavior is one of the special factors when developing a child IEP, specifically the use of positive behavior intervention and support for any child with a disability. Incidents of child misbehavior and classroom disruption may indicate that the child IEP needs to include appropriate behavior support. The procedure requirement for discipline by IDA differs from non-IDA eligible students. Thank you.
Thank you. Helene, then Edith, and then Stephanie Ackers-Wright. You know what, Ms. Grossman spoke at the last item, so maybe that's, if she's not here. So, you know what, I'll leave it, I'll come back to it just in case. Edith Cohen, Stephanie Ackers-Wright, Stacey Ashland.
Hi, everyone.
Yep.
So after an ever-shifting narrative of misrepresentation and lies involving the cancellation of multivariable calculus as a district course, after explicit promises made that we would if we only could, but the CD doesn't let us, and it's best to offer it during school hours, the final narrative emerged as, well, we can, but we won't. This was hinted on social media by the board president, and then the GAN high school leadership team, 4 of them, spelled out a belief that allowing advanced math students to learn during school hours make it harder for others with other privileges to get into top colleges. In the height of hypocrisy, the word wellness was uttered in the context of forcing students to choose between extracurriculars and learning a core subject. The word equity is uttered because due to PAUSD policies by choice, in divergence from neighboring districts, advanced math is only accessible to students that learn on their own after school.
Thank you. Stephanie Ackers-Wright, Stacy Ashland, Lars Johnson.
Parent of a special needs child in the district, I'm deeply concerned about a behavioral intervention.
Is that on? I don't know that that's on.
We're going to reset chat.
Yeah.
It needs new batteries. It's dying.
Am I on? Check.
Oh, okay.
Hello. Can I have?
Let's,
Hello.
okay. Can we reset her to a minute?
Let me know when.
Great. Okay, go ahead.
As a parent of a special needs child in the district, I am deeply concerned about the incident at JLS and the subsequent conversations about behavioral interventions in the district. I would like to direct the attention of the board to the work of Dr. Ross Green, developer of the evidence-based collaborative and proactive solutions model, which provides us with a framework for understanding and supporting kids with challenging behaviors. This model is an effective form of behavioral reform. It is time we bring this model into our schools. When children exhibit explosive behaviors, research tells us it is because they are lacking the skills to be able to do better. This model is proven to be successful in helping the children and the adults that care for them to develop the skills to solve problems proactively and prevent challenging behavior. More information is freely available at livesinthebalance.org. When we are not proactive, the costs can be devastating. Prevention saves lives. Let's provide our teachers with the tools they need to keep our schools safe by implementing the collaborative and proactive solutions model.
Thank you. Stacy, Lars, Christina Schmidt.
Thank you. My name is Stacy Ashland, and I'm the parent of 2 students who attended Palo Alto Unified. My son all the way from age 3 to graduation, and my daughter from kinder through graduation. My students graduated in 2017 and 2020. My son was on an IEP starting at age 3 years old, and I was actively involved in the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education for 15 years. The topic I'm talking about tonight is the closure and relocation of 2 special ed classrooms from Maloney and Escondido to Nixon and Barron Park. I've seen great progress in my years in this district, 18 years, especially regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm incredibly pleased under the leadership of Superintendent Austin and the boards to see the adoption of the SWIFT framework to measure progress in closing the achievement gap. As this relates particularly to students of color. And if you're not familiar, students of color are disproportionately represented in special education. In addition, getting us through the pandemic is immense. So that alone is incredible what you guys have been through in the past couple of years.
Your time is up, Ms. Ashland. Can you send us an email with the rest of your comments? Thank you. I'm sorry. Lars, Christina, Jennifer Canerva.
Good evening, dear board members. Good evening, dear board members. School is out for summer, and what a year it's been. Just one more thing. You get to score the district leadership on how they have done in advancing the best interests of our children. And when you do this, I would like to remind you that we have elected you as our board members to administer a public school district that looks after the most vulnerable children, provides a safe environment, an encouraging environment, and does not cave to special interests that are in the way of those goals. I really appreciate your service, and I hope you know what to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christina Schmidt, Jennifer Canerva, and then Arya Sufiani. Is Christina on Zoom? Do you see her there? You can come back. Okay. She's there? Okay.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Good evening. I want to address the increasing negativity targeting our students with special needs. It is disheartening to witness the irresponsibility of those who propagate social media posts exposing personal information and speculating on removing children with special needs from our schools. This toxic dialogue is entirely unacceptable. Children with behavior issues deserve compassion and support. Schools are responsible for providing interventions, therapeutic support, and resources to address their needs. Teachers are responsible for understanding and implementing those interventions. We need IEPs that are implemented with fidelity, safety plans, parent education, and clear communication. Embracing a compassionate and empathetic approach towards children with special needs fosters empathy and the potential for positive change in their lives and in this community. Thank you.
Ms. Schmidt. Jennifer Canerva, Arya Sufiani, and then Akshaya Ardaya.
I'd like to share more thoughts on room 19. My child graduated from Maloney
Come close
in
to the
room.
mic so we can hear.
Yeah. Okay. My child graduated from Maloney in room 19 last week, where he started as a kindergartner. I was so proud watching him with his peers, and I listened as the speakers praised the kids for the values they learned, how to be resilient, inclusive, how to advocate for themselves and others. Speaking about the room 19 closure to me is and will always be about doing the right thing, trying in every possible way to correct a systemic failure. This is simply and only about advocating that our children should be allowed to stay in the stable choice school where they have thrived and belong. It's all I've ever hoped for my child. Now, I know that progress isn't always linear and that it's often those who are most vulnerable who are forced to become advocates on their own behalf. But there are so few moments in life, whether you're a lawyer, an educator, or a researcher, where you can actually step up and right a wrong. Thanks to those who've stood with us. I couldn't be more grateful for your courage.
Thank you. Arya, Akshaya, and Star Teach Out.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a former employee of Palo Alto Unified, and Palo Alto Unified remains dear to my heart. First and foremost, congratulations, class of 2023, you made it. I would really like Palo Alto Unified to really consider safety protocols and PBIS. I worked at other districts and I really understood how much PBIS makes a difference. And if possible, the district can consider implementing metal detectors or something to prevent and to keep the campuses safe. I think the students really deserve a safe campus. And I hope the district can collaborate with staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Akshaya, I think is in person, and then Star, and then Vaibhav.
Hello. Hi, board members. I'm here to talk about some of the recent observations after the JLS incident, which was very unfortunate. Like I said in the last board meeting, I have a child with a disability, and I'm observing increased amount of speculation, uninformed kind of behavior from parents. You know, these autistic children or the children with disabilities, they grow up into autistic adults or adults with disabilities. Some of them have successful careers, but they all still remember comments made against them in the childhood. So let's be kind to each other. Let's not paint the whole community just because, you know, there was that one unfortunate incident. Some of us are still taking every day, one day at a time, and struggling to survive, trying to make our mark in this society. And let's be kind to one another, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Star Teach Out and Vaibhav.
Good evening.
about 5 years ago, I sent a draft student survey into the board to consider to try to expand student voice with respect to their courses. And then about 3 years ago, I sent in a similar request having to do with implementing a 360-degree review process that included 2 articles, one from the Harvard Business Review, and one was about the effectiveness of this feedback in public schools. And I really would love for our board to seriously consider implementing this 360-degree review process, which allows everyone to review each other. And so everyone has a voice, our teachers, our administrators, our district office. I think we need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vaibhav?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to echo the comments of Christina Schmidt and Akshay earlier. It's really sad to hear small but a disproportionately loud section in our own community seek segregation of special ed students after the incident at JLS. And sad and heartbreaking though these comments are, in such a time, I'm just reminded of how fortunate we are to have all of you. And I want to extend my gratitude and appreciation to those who have supported, welcomed, and included students with special needs in Palo Alto. That includes you, our board trustees, our superintendent, our district leadership, our special ed department, our awesome staff, students, and community. Our children and families are blessed to have you. And when we hear toxic remarks, I will think of you with gratitude. Please don't go away. Please continue to do what you're doing. Our children and families need you. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, I'll just try to see, is Helene Grossman here wanting to speak, or was that for the other item? Okay. All right. That is the end of open forum. And now we're going to try this different thing and go right into staff reports. So Dr. Austin for the Title IX report.
Mr. Bahadur Singh is going to introduce this item.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Austin. This evening, Mr. Robert Andrade is here tonight to provide the annual update on Title IX. And as he comes to the podium, I just want to take a quick minute to recognize the efforts he has performed this past year. Special thanks not only on behalf of students, families, but the staff who's been a great resource and really moved the needle on our efforts for Title IX. So take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. So, good evening, board members, district administration, and Dr. Austin. Can you hear me? Okay, let me try this again. Okay. Good morning, good evening, board members, Dr. Austin and district administration. It's my pleasure as your Title IX coordinator to speak to you in regards to our Title IX update for the rest of the year. Now, I'm gonna do something a little different here because every month you receive the Title IX update, which includes what kind of cases we get, our case total, and how many cases we've resolved and what is open. I'm gonna pivot here because I don't think we spend enough time to really discuss what has our approach been and what do we actually do when a Title IX report comes in. So let me focus on these 3 things. When I started this position 3 years, or this past year, I recognized that there was 3 areas that we needed to focus on. And part of my goal was to kind of take Dr. Austin's approach in trying to understand how can we simplify what these issues are and focus really hard on them to make them better for our community and our students and our staff. And what I recognized was that we had issues with accessibility and awareness. We had issues with administrative response and support. And we had issues with being student-centered and student-driven. You know, students are the ones who are affected in this process the most, yet they don't have a place or a role other than just being the survivor or the victim or the individual with trauma. So let me start off with accessibility and awareness. Part of what we have is our UCP form. Initially, our form was pretty old, outdated, and cumbersome, and something that we recognize is that when you're going to fill out this form, you in fact are coming from a place of trauma. After a year's worth of research and gathering every single complaint form from every single school district in the state of California, I present to you that at the beginning of this year, we made the most comprehensive form as one way for us to reduce the amount of trauma in which our families and students come to us to report something that's important or something that they've experienced in a negative way. We've revamped that form completely to be more user-friendly, and we've made it accessible both physically at each of our school sites and digitally on our website. As you can see, there's a copy of the form there, and there's a QR code so you can access that digitally. On top of that, we didn't have a cohesive way to report what was going on in any form of misconduct for students. We had a different form for anonymous reports, we had a different form for administrators, and we had a different form for students and teachers. And so what we wanted to do was bring it all together in one place. There's one reporting form for all students, parents, teachers, and staff, and administrators. And not only can you report in that one form, you can do it anonymously as well. Now bringing one place for everyone to come to us for. On top of increasing accessibility and awareness was my duties and obligations of taking a 700-page or 700-plus page law and summarizing it to families so that they can understand it as they navigate through their trauma. And so in doing so in my work here, the focus has been to really capture what's going on in the Title IX process and trying to engage with our students who learn differently. Some of us are visual learners. Some of you are visual learners. I myself am a visual learner. So being able to navigate through a process in which you can see what steps are next and sitting with parents and students to be able to teach them what is next and what you can expect has been our focus. So we've created resources to really guide both anyone who's going through this process, whether you be a student, a family, or a staff member. Now, the next thing I want to focus on is our administrative response and support. In many situations, our administrators and our principals are the first line of response when a student has experienced some negative impact or some highly traumatic event. And in what I've learned is it's important to empower our principals so they know what exactly tools they have at their disposal to address a situation that is really urgent and in dire need of assistance. So we started off by being able to support administrators by teaching them what can you do to stop, prevent, or address the effects of alleged negative misconduct, and understanding what tools you have. So some examples that we've really taught our administrators this year is engaging in no contact directives, showing you that you can engage in different ways to increase supervision on campus to promote the safety of students. You can modify class schedules so that students don't come into contact with one another. You can place students in separate classes when they're experiencing high levels and forms of bullying. And you can transfer students who are taught to a class taught by a different teacher if the complaint is about a teacher affecting a student in a negative way. And not only are we empowering our principals and our administrators to know what measures they can take, but also to address the mental health component and the support that we need to provide students, because just taking those measures alone is not enough. We have to be able to consider what a person, a survivor, a victim of any form of harassment or discrimination wants in terms of support. And so we provide them with the opportunity to engage in that by restoring some sense of agency. We go over with principals and individuals, what mental health access do you have? We go over what sort of wellness support you can get by going to a safe space such as the wellness center on your campus. And lastly, we address concepts of academic support because we recognize at the end of the day, if you're experiencing trauma, you're not going to be a normal student in the classroom. You're not going to be able to focus on your tests. You're not going to be able to focus on your exam. You're not going to be able to focus on the assignments that you need. So what can we do to provide you support so that you can have a seamless experience, at least at school? Our ultimate goal is to minimize the burden on the individual who is the target of the alleged harassment, and that's taking a trauma-informed approach. In the past, we didn't have this, because what was happening was we were asking students what happened during their negative experience, but we weren't asking them how they felt. And so now the purpose of what we try to do here is putting students at the center of understanding and what happened at kind of the back. You know, when I meet with students, I want to know who you are. I want to know what your dreams and aspirations are. I want to know who you are as a student at PAUSD, and then we can discuss what happened. And in that situation, it's about restoring some sense of humanity to the students that we have as they navigate through trauma. Now, the last thing I want to focus on is being student-centered and student-driven. This is something where students did not feel a part of. And so my focus has been to, one, get as much feedback as possible, but also channeling all of the student input that we have and advocacy into process participation. Meaning that was me going to different school sites, talking to students, teaching them what's going on, but also showing them that this is what the process is. If you don't like it, work with me through it so we can find where these problems are. The other portion of that is creating resources for students by students. It's one thing to take into account a 700+ page law. It's another thing to teach that to students and then have them re-summarize that information in a manner in which their peers can understand. And as you can see in that poster there, that is a student-created poster by students at Gunn High School, who I will recognize here today in terms of the work that they've done and seeing how they're able to convey that information over to us as a district. On top of that, that's allowed me to develop interpersonal connections with students affected by misconduct and also continue building more. Now, lastly, let me talk about the Title IX Student Advisory Board. This is a year-long commitment where students have engaged in monthly seminars with me to understand Title IX from the beginning, whether its own conception, its role in American jurisprudence, and the whole ins and outs of that concept as a whole. Students dedicated their time and efforts to meet with me and grapple with this idea, and I have to really commend them because what they accomplished was as difficult as a first-year law course. They understood burden shifting, they understood civil procedure, they understood preponderance of the evidence and different standards that many students might not be able to grasp, and they were able to tackle it head on. So not only did they learn about district procedures in a comprehensive and in-depth manner, but they also raised awareness on their campus and district-wide. So as I conclude here tonight in my presentation to you, it is actually with great honor for me to be able to recognize 6 students from Gunn High School for their efforts and what they have done in advancing Title IX initiatives thus far. And so with that, I would like to recognize these students. For those of you who have come in here today, please, after I call your name, please come to the front. I'd like to recognize Ravina Nath, Annabelle, Annabelle Honigstein, who's not able to make it. Elizabeth Jackson, who's also not here today. Lauren Kane. Zoe Leontis, who also could not make it. And lastly, Sophia Turian. So if we could give them all there's no way I could have done this alone, and so having their support throughout this entire year is something exciting to know that we can continue this on for the years to come. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. It was a really lovely presentation. We've got some community comments, and then I'm sure board members have some questions and comments. So let's start with Sarah Woodham, and then Alex Totic.
Hi, where did Robert go? I don't know.
Get close to the mic, and Robert's over there.
Oh, there. Okay, hi. Okay. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done with respect to this Title IX complaint procedure. And, I looked through it, and I guess I wanted to make a point just on the awareness and accessibility piece, because one of the things that's come out is that, just that I've seen in the last week, is that there's a lot of confusion over Title IX versus UCP. And so that's the point I really wanted to make, because even as I love the flow chart. I'm a visual person too. So having that flow chart is great. I feel like, I know this was a Title IX report, and even then I wasn't clear whether or not this was supposed to be a Title IX report or Title IX with UCP embedded or the whole thing, because you talked about one streamlined process. But it feels like there should also be like a UCP version of that flow chart, because Title IX, just most people are fairly familiar, and it's gender harassment by gender, and things that are discrimination, whether or not by race or race, ethnicity, abilities, should also be specifically, I think, laid out in a similar manner, even if the complaint procedure, the complaint process is like 90% the same, which it should be. And I think the work you're doing there looks really great. And I guess, you said that it was available in all the offices, but if folks don't know what they don't know, and they don't even know it exists, the fact that it's sitting on a shelf somewhere is a little irrelevant. So I feel like the district should actually push this out like twice a year on a regular basis, not right at the beginning of the year, because that's when everybody gets totally overwhelmed, but like October-ish, when stuff starts to get a little more real. You push it out.
Thank you, Ms. Fodum.
Okay, there we go.
Alex Tucker.
Hi, I'm Alex Tadic, and my family was involved in a Title IX incident at Gun 2 years ago. It was a pretty big one, involved 6 kids on one side and many others on the other side. And I have experience with all the suggestions that were listed on a slide there were implemented for my family. Unfortunately, that never resulted in harassment stopping. So we ended up in a tort claim with District of Palo Alto, which was eventually resolved to anyone's happiness. But so what I wanted to say is that slide goes far, but I would love for that to be a way for, for the harassment to actually stop and to say what happens if it doesn't stop. How do you make, because if your student is continuously harassed, the mental health and all those things, they're just never going to be happy or be able to attend the school. The conclusion of my incident was that the kids got transferred to a different school where they're thriving. And that was the end of it. So if anybody would like to talk about what it's like to be on the other side, I think this was the biggest Title IX incident that year. I would be happy to share my insight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those are all of our community comments. Let me just make sure. Okay, yes, those are all my community comments. So colleagues, any questions or comments for Robert or, okay.
Sure. Where's Robert? There we go.
Probably
Yeah, you can come up.
You never know.
I'm not gonna grill you. I really appreciated the presentation and the report. We as a board have been very focused on Title IX for a number of years, and as a district have been focused on it since 2016 or so, when we had occasion to really reevaluate how the district was handling Title IX. And so having been involved in the process and especially focusing on accessibility for students, that was something over the last couple of years we've really tried to focus on, making sure students are involved, that they understand the process. Because once we got past the initial, first 5 or 6 years of sort of making sure that we had the processes set up and continuing to improve them, I think the second most important thing is making sure students know how to avail themselves of the process and feel comfortable doing it. What I appreciated about your presentation was that it focused on that. When the Trump administration had the Title IX regulation changes, Ken Dauber and I were on the BPRC, and we were discussing how exactly we were to incorporate those, or rather how we were to comply with the change in the law while also maintaining what this board had expressed was a very clear goal of minimizing the burden on survivors and protecting survivors. Because as some folks may not know, when the regulations were being changed, there was an elevation of the interest to the respondent. Including certain rights that hadn't existed before. And the fear was, and what happened in other districts throughout the country, was that there would be a chilling effect on complainants. So I very much appreciate the focus that you've placed on bringing students into the fold, on minimizing the burden on complainants. I say that as a board member, I say that as a litigator who represents survivors of sexual abuse against institutions, including public education institutions. And so, the follow-up is always the key. I really do but I really do pay attention to the Title IX reports we get, because to me, this is fantastic. And then, of course, the proof is in how we're executing and what we're doing with the complaints that come in and the numbers, month after month. So all that to say, I thank you. This is great. And just to add one more thing, the point that the gentleman raised about, follow-up, and I think to me also, educating folks on the remedies, which it's in your presentation, but that was an area that we had a particular gap in over the last several years, which was, sure, we can tell people how to get involved. We can make them feel comfortable and make sure they are comfortable in making reports and knowing what to do next. What happens once the remedy is put into place? And, what are the next 6 steps, if this happens and if this doesn't happen, And I know that that's a discussion that, is encouraged to have with the complainants and the individual involved. But it's just an area that I would emphasize a continuing focus on, because, as you heard, I think that's an area that sometimes can fall a little bit deprioritized to the initial bringing the complainants in and guiding them through the process until a resolution is reached. But of course, the post-resolution remedies and consequences are also equally important. So, I very much appreciated the presentation, and I'm glad to see you at the helm of Title IX.
Thank you.
I just have a couple quick things. One, I believe you said, and I just want to confirm this is correct, that these, maybe not these particular students, I don't know what year of school you are, but the Student Advisory Board is something that's going to continue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's going to always be a place where there's a mechanism for students to continue to provide input into the process, what's working, what's not working, what students still are having trouble wrapping their heads around, what could be improved, all of that.
There's always going to be a place for them.
All right, good, great. And then I guess following up on that, how, to this point about stuff sitting on a shelf in an office, how is this information communicated to students in particular?
It varies from school site to school site, but generally our approach is, depending on who is the administrator on point for Title IX or UCP issues, the administrator, once they've received a report, whether it be from a student or a teacher, they offer the UCP form either physically or virtually through email. And usually when it's offered via email, that's including their parents who are in the email as well, and also my contact information where I'm CC'd. So if a family ever wants to file a complaint or a report, they're provided that digitally and then sometimes physically. But most importantly, they're provided with my contact information where they can engage it.
Is there any sort of broader education, though, before I understand that if somebody complains of something, then this starts this process. But is there any education sort of proactively before that step, sort of letting, if you've experienced any of these things here, there's an avenue for you? Are we doing that? I mean, I know we have to, yeah.
Again, I think this is something kind of varies from school site to school site, because students usually contact me in terms of when they want me to be present at certain events.
Right. Yeah.
And at least I can use Gun as an example this year. They had me talk at their denim day where I had a packed wellness center full of students where I was able to go through all of this information. I also show up to student health fairs that are available throughout the year. And then I also meet with counselors and individuals, because sometimes students will report these to their counselors. They haven't gone to the administrator just yet, but sometimes counselors will have me present in this meeting so I can walk students through this process as well. Most of the time, it's me discussing with families like, if you file a complaint, this is what can happen. If you don't file a complaint, this is also what we're still going to keep doing to support you. Ultimately, it's just providing students with the understanding of what opportunities you have available to you. Because some students ultimately, at the end of the day, just want the conduct to stop. And something formulaic like a formal investigation might not be the best approach for them, or something like an informal resolution might not be the best approach. So really, what I do in such situations to educate students is I meet with them personally and individually, where I can at least give them as much options as they have available to them, which I think that might be more necessary in every particular case being different, and then walking them through each and every one. I do this with families at the elementary school level, and for students at the high school level, I meet with them individually. And so far, I've found it to be pretty successful.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins, nothing. Okay, Ms. Siegel.
First, I wanted to thank you and staff and all the students for your hard work and focus on this very important issue. I was really impressed with your presentation and by the student engagement and the focus of minimizing the burden on the individual who was the target of the alleged harassment. I was very pleased that that was clearly stated. Last fall, I had listening groups of middle school students and high school students, and a lot of them reported that they didn't know what to do if something happened. And so, kind of echoing what other people have said, having a proactive approach, if this isn't already happening, maybe having the visual in each classroom to ensure that it's not site-based in terms of which schools are getting some information, I think would be really helpful. I was wondering, I would love to see year-to-year kind of reporting for each site, because we get a report that shows, but just so that we can kind of compare and see how we're doing. Is there also a student advisory board at Pali is one of my questions.
So the student advisory board is open to all high school students.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it just happened that this year it was
Primarily gun for this
primarily
year.
gun. Okay, so it's open to both. And then, yeah, basically proactively sharing this before someone needs to file it, I think would be great. So thinking about how to proactively reach out to each and every school, to each and every family through email and through the visuals, I think would be fantastic. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really helpful.
Might I add something there? And I recognize that everyone wants to know and see more access again. And the focus is that that poster that I showed is actually going to be posted at every single secondary site, in every single restroom, and every single locker room. And also, yeah, and everything. So it's going to be everywhere moving forward. Yeah. Yeah.
I was encouraging that, but it looks like it's already done. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I've just got a few questions or thoughts. One being, I'm wondering about how parents are, thinking especially younger kids, right? How parents are communicated these things, and more specifically UCP, right? If they're up in schools, but a parent is concerned about something and they don't know about this process, you don't have to have an answer for this now, but I do think I'm hearing a bunch of us say, hey, let's think about how we're making sure all families in the district know if something happens that violates either Title IX or rises to the level of UCP, that they know, what action they can take. I'm wondering if you can speak to, because I've had a lot of community members ask me this, and I realized that I think I'm clear on it, but maybe I'm not. You are a Title IX coordinator. Does every Title IX complaint come through you, or are some handled at the site?
So every Title IX complaint is something that I'm notified. There are some Title IX complaints that are resolved at the site because they do not rise to the level of Title IX. And what I usually tell administrators in that sense is it's Title IX related, but it's not Title IX violation. And in that situation, I usually speak with our administrators to discuss what is the conduct that happened, and then what can we do to solve it at the site if it hasn't resulted in something along the lines of a sexual assault or any form of touching. That's not to say that we don't address every single report at my office. Most of the time, it's just guidance. It's just guidance. Sometimes we have cases that are elementary school students playing butt tag. And in many situations, that might not be something that rises to the level of Title IX because there's no malintent and there's no touching for any sort of sexual gratification. But that doesn't mean we just let it go. We have to address it and approach it in a restorative way for some of our students so that they recognize that this behavior is not okay. And then also reinforcing that over and over again, because this is a behavior that was taught, and we have to address how to unteach this type of behavior.
Thank you. And I guess I have a similar question for a UCP. You deal with some UCPs as well that aren't Title IX.
Yes.
Right? But some are handled at the site.
Yeah.
And how is that determined? What happens at the site and what comes to you?
What comes to me is conduct based on a protected status or class. And the next portion of what comes next is the conduct that a student experienced severe, persistent, or pervasive? If the conduct hasn't usually risen to that level, in many regards, California law requires me to dismiss those complaints. But that is not satisfactory to my approach. That's where we kind of bring the site in, because that's when the site needs to address the underlying behavior, whether it be racism, sexism, misogyny, any sort of type of behavior with which a student has engaged in. So even though a complaint might not rise to the legal thresholds that we have, we still address that basically with our principals and our staff, because at the end of the day, our focus is that our students can be normal kids in the classroom, not students who are just known for their trauma.
Thank you. Oh gosh, I had one more question about our UCP. Oh, I know. You said that some people are just interested in sort of resolving it informally. They don't want to go through the whole process. We still document that those happened, right? Like we're keeping track, when we keep track, even if it goes through an informal process, it still sort of counts as something we dealt with, investigated, remedied. Yes?
Yes, and in many situations, the informal resolution operates as a sort of mediation where I sit two students in separate rooms and I ask one student how they feel and how this affected them. And then I go to the next room and I ask the student, do you understand how this affected this other student? And what do you think? Do you have any feelings of remorse? How do you want to get there? And I go back and forth between the students and ask them until they're able to come into the room together and kind of work out their differences. So in situations pertaining to bullying, for example, this might work. In situations pertaining to sexual assault and harassment, this is kind of a no-go. No student who's been a victim or a survivor of any of those situations wants to be in the same room with a student who's affected them in a negative way. So it is fluid. I think our ultimate purpose is to take a fluid approach. And, what is the best opportunity for students to get through this process?
Okay, thank you. I think my last question. If a family is offered a UCP, I wonder if we have, or title, if we have sort of that flow chart that can go along with it, because I think often, even if we make the offer of a UCP, some people don't know what that is. And I want to make sure that, and maybe we will resolve that by putting it in bathrooms and sending it home to parents and whatnot. But just making sure that if you aren't in the weeds in the district at all, you might have no idea what that is. I'm so glad to see the student advisory group and that so many are from Gunn, because I know a few years ago we had that Pally Rise task force. And there was an interest in making sure we had Gunn involved. Would love to see more gender diversity on that group if you can get more people interested. But thank you so much. I mean, I think it's great work, and I feel confident we are headed in a really good direction. Anything else, colleagues? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Every Student Reads. We are a clapping bunch tonight. We are like, I love it. It's, maybe on this one too.
Well, we better clap on this one. My gosh, we should just start with applause on this one. Before I turn this over to Ms. Brown, just a last comment. First of all, we're not sure that Robert's title is what it needs to be any longer, because it's called Title IX Coordinator, it'd be easy to not know that he handles UCPs. Next on our website, if you just put in the word complaint, the page comes up with everything we just talked about, UCP, Title IX, complaints against employees, special education, it all comes up. So it's there. So we're doing a good job there. And the last comment for Robert, and so many people do great jobs here, Robert's impact is about as significant as you can get in a first year. It is a different world in that office and the work that they do. So thank you again, Robert. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Brown to talk about something that should have a 2-hour presentation and a headline in both newspapers, hint to both newspapers, tomorrow, because what she is about to share is unprecedented, unparalleled in the state, and I just don't think is getting the attention it deserves for everyone involved. So with that, you guys better have a heck of a presentation.
After that
Ms. Brown, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dr. Austin. Tonight, we're sharing the end of the year results for the second year of the Every Student Reads initiative, specifically for progress indicator number 3. But before I turn it over to Ms. Reynolds, I just want to thank the teachers and principals for their tremendous work this year. It was a rough year implementing new curriculum and a new assessment tool with the support tool that came with it, and we are just extremely proud and want to just acknowledge that our educators rose to the occasion and have knocked it out of the park. And we are making a significant difference for our most vulnerable students. So as a reminder, Progress Indicator 1 and 2 results will be presented in the fall after we have our CASP results. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Reynolds.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Good evening, board members. I'm so glad so many people came to see this presentation. Thank you for coming. Elementary Educational Services has completed the second year of the Every Student Reads initiative. Implementation focusing on increasing the reading proficiency of the following historically underserved groups you can see on this slide. We are proud of the effort our students continue to put into their reading. Being literate is transformative. Instructional practice implemented by dedicated and highly trained educators matters, as evidenced by our reading results. Our Every Student Reads initiative ESRI groups have grown since the middle of the year when all children exceeded the Progress Indicator 3 end-of-year goal. And our end-of-year results in the second to the last column provide the percentage of students within each ESRI group reading on or above grade level. Our students are responding to instruction as the reading proficiency of ESRI groups has increased by 19 to 37 percentage points since the beginning of the year. That's what I'm talking about. All right. This graph includes the number of children within the identified ESRI groups at each proficiency level. Asian, white, and all students K through 5 are also included. It informs our work in meeting the PAUSD promise goal of all students reading on or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. The following slides illustrate changes in reading proficiency from the beginning of year to the end of year for each ESRI group. It demonstrates the number of students reading above or on grade level, 1 grade level below, 2 grade levels below, or 3 or more grade levels below, which are the end-of-year standards. African American students, 80% of African American students are reading on or above grade level, a 33 percentage point increase from the beginning of year. %. 56% of Pacific Islander students are reading on or above grade level, a 29 percentage point increase from the beginning of year. Unprecedented results, I believe Dr. Austin said. This is exceptional superintendent leadership. 65% of Hispanic or Latino students are reading above grade level, which is a 36 percentage point increase. Socioeconomically disadvantaged students. 63% of our socioeconomically disadvantaged students are now proficient readers, with a 30 percentage point increase. 49% of our Hispanic or Latino socioeconomically disadvantaged students read on or above grade level. These students also saw a 30 percentage point growth from the beginning of year. 63% of students with disabilities are meeting the end-of-year proficiency. They are reading on or above grade level, 63%. That's a 19 percentage point increase from the beginning of the year. 66% of our English learners are reading on or above grade level, increasing 37 percentage points from fall to spring. All ESRI groups have combined 71% of the students in ESRI are now reading on or above grade level, 71% K through 5. Ms. Conaway, our Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Student Affairs, will share with you the SWIFT focus group results.
Thank you, Danae. What's great is that the iReady diagnostic reading data allows us a welcomed opportunity to take a look at an additional metric that has not been included in our SWIFT plan. So this allows us to take that focus group and identify how they're specifically doing under the reading initiative. And like you saw with the rest of the groups, we're seeing some really great data there. So at the year's start, 273 students, or 40% of the focus group was at or above reading grade level. This increased to 62% by mid-year, and by end of year, 77%. So this is very consistent with a greater than 30% increase rate that we've seen with our other subgroups, with a total of 37% increase overall from beginning of year to end of year. So we're very proud of that.
Here you can see the results for all students in Palo Alto Unified, and 87% of all students K through 5 are reading on or above grade level. Our teachers and students are working hard. I know you're really interested in looking at the students by grade level, so we have included this for you. And you can see here that this graph includes the proficiency by grade level within each tier. And what we want to make sure is as our students increase in grade level, we know that the grade level content will increase. And so it's important that our teachers are equipped with the latest research in reading and in pedagogy to make sure that students are able to access more complex text structures and reading information that they may not be necessarily familiar with or have that vocabulary. And so we're excited that our 4th and 5th grade teachers are taking the IMSC Orton-Gillingham morphology training this spring and also in the fall, and we'll be implementing that in grades 4 and 5 next school year. So all K-5 students will have phonics or morphology instruction across all grade levels in PAUSD. And I know you're also interested, well, what if kids that are ESRI attend PAUSD in fall, winter, and spring? What did those students look like, Danae? Because we know we have kids that come and go. So we have that data for you as well. So 91% of our kindergartners that are in ESRI that were in PAUSD are on or above grade level. 77% of our first graders are on or above grade level, and 73% of our second graders are on or above grade level. And then for our students who attended in grades 3 through 5, ESRI students, 81% of third graders are on or above grade level, 59% of 4th grade, and 62% of 5th graders are on or above grade level. And what we really appreciate about the iReady assessment is that it gives teachers individual student data that shows student strengths and specific areas for teachers to really hone in on regarding the different domains. And we're looking at 4th grade in terms of where we want to focus next year around vocabulary and reading comprehension, specifically around informational text. Our partners at Curriculum Associates provide the next 3 slides for us. And here you can see the growth by grade and reading proficiency for all PAUSD students in grades K through 5. And we're really excited to see that the students that we know need to make the most progress are actually making the most growth. And that shows that the work we've been doing, really focusing on reading and providing outstanding professional learning for our teachers, our principals getting into classrooms, our elementary principal collaborative meeting together monthly. All of the work we focused on the last 2 years and will continue to work on next year is making a difference. And we're encouraged by this report to see that the students who need to make the most growth, children that are 1 or more years below grade level, are actually doing that. And they're moving closer to meeting the end of year standards and getting closer to grade level. And then here you can see how fabulous PAUSD schools are. This slide reflects the median student performance and median percent of typical growth of PAUSD elementary schools from fall to spring. And yes, we are in the high performance, high growth quadrant again for the spring, like we were mid-year because we're PAUSD, but you know, it's important to note that. And then this is what we look like K-5, just by grade level. Again, in the high performance, high growth quadrant, which our friends at Curriculum Associates like to remind us is unprecedented
Those fifth graders are literally
and
off the
quite
chart.
amazing. Yeah, there are grade levels in schools off the chart, literally off the chart. So we can give it up to our teachers and our students and the Every Student Reads initiative. Thank you.
Okay, we have one community comment, Nicole Chiwang.
Good evening. I just wanted to say congratulations to the district and to the staff, and very importantly to the teachers and the aides that are in the classrooms doing this work, and to the community for being so supportive of this priority. To what Dr. Austin said, I don't think it's getting as much coverage as it should, and so congratulations. And I do want to say that I think that this, if anything, points to having higher goals. I know as someone who does strategy and goal setting in my day-to-day job, it's hard to know where to set the goal in the beginning. And so 5% probably seemed like a lot at the time. And now we've seen we can blow 5% out of the water. So I think this is one of those Kennedy's statement, putting a man on the moon. And so we should set really, really high goals, because I think we've seen that with the right supports from everyone in our community, we can achieve those goals. And so I'm really excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Claps. I feel like I want to implement like an always clap. It's just nice. It feels different. Comments? Questions? Yep, go ahead. No one?
I want to hear what Todd has to say.
Okay, we'll go down this way. Gosh, pressure. Mr. Collins.
I haven't gotten that since school. Wow, that was great. I really, Danae, stand up, please. I mean, and I know it's not just you. I mean, you stand for an entire organization's worth of focus on this goal, and I think that's one of the things I really take away from this is, we've got a lot of resources and capabilities here, and most importantly, we've got an unbelievable faculty and staff, and it shows that when you organize your efforts and point them at something that's really important, and really focus on the things that you need to change. And I mentioned, I think back in a few months ago, you shared sort of the list of all the things that have been done, which, by the way, I've copied into a Google Doc and probably sent out to 100 people all over the state. I mean, because people are dying to find out what to do to achieve. I mean, that's even without knowing what these results are. They just want to know what to do to improve. And I just think that, it just shows that when you've really created such a great organization and focused it so well, and then taken to heart the charge that you can change, you need to change the things you need to change to achieve the results that you want to achieve. I mean, you get these kind of results. I'm obsessed by this slide that how the growth vary across placement levels, because it's great that we make good growth or more than 100% growth at kids who are at or above already. But the real challenge and the reason we did all this is for kids who are 2 or 3 grades behind, who have to go more than 100% a year to even have a hope of catching up. And we know in the vast majority of venues across the across the United States, across the world, those kids never catch up. Because the idea that they've fallen behind and now they'll grow more than 100% a year is like, you can't imagine it. So to look at these numbers, I mean, for kids 3 or more grades below, median growth was 248%. I mean, and then for kids who are 2 grades below, it was 170%. I mean, I don't even know how to process this. It's so amazing. So my hat's off to certainly our students first and foremost and their families, because they're the ones who really achieved, but our organization really made it possible so that they could do that. So, congratulations. I really look forward to seeing what the SBAC results, the CAS results are, because, obviously we changed the assessment from the last time. I'll point out, I did the comparison that you guys didn't do because of the change of the assessment. I looked back and what the assessment was last year versus the end of year this year. And, on average, it was 15 or 16 percentage points higher this year than last year, and that's after improving, several points last year. So it's really, it's unprecedented stuff. And, I'm confident that when August rolls around and we're able to look at our SBAC results, that we'll see something the same. So I'll go home very happy tonight and probably have a drink to celebrate with my wife, because this is just great news for our students and for our district. So thank you.
All right, well, I was at the district office a few months ago for a meeting, and I ran into a parent in the hallway, not a friend, someone I knew only casually, and she stopped me because she wanted to thank me for the changes to our reading program. Her son was in 3rd grade, I think, and she told me that until this year, he hated reading. It was a huge struggle for him. He was below grade level, and he just hated it. He avoided it because he was bad at it. But this year, she said everything for him changed. He blossomed, he made huge improvements, and now he loves to read. She says he's walking around the house with a book all the time. So after she told me this, I ran into Miss Reynolds' office and I grabbed her out and I had her come and hear and accept the praise herself, because I certainly wasn't the one who deserved it. But what I love about this story is that this woman's son was not in one of the Every Student Reads Initiative focus groups. The headline of these results that we saw today was 19 to 37% increases, which drastically surpasses even our wildest hopes, as I think it's very clear from all of us tonight. But the benefits of the initiative did not come at the expense of other students, of higher achieving students, but rather extended to all students. And that's kind of the point I want to make. Our school district, it's like an ecosystem. Our students sit in the same classrooms, they're taught the same curriculum by the same teachers, they play on the same playgrounds, they attend the same assemblies, they sing in the same choirs. And for decades, our Black, Pacific Islander, Latino students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and our students with disabilities have been kind of like the canaries in the coal mine, warning us that our ecosystem needs attention, that it's not as healthy as it should be. And when we talk about equity, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about healing the ecosystem. We're talking about making changes that enable all of our kids to thrive, because they aren't right now. If they were, we wouldn't need the Every Student Reads initiative for either the students in the focus groups or for the children like the son of the mom who stopped me in the hall. And we also wouldn't need to invest tens of millions of dollars annually on mental health and wellness to support students, many of whom are succeeding academically but suffering emotionally. Later in this meeting, staff is going to present us with an annual budget of over $300 million. And 85% of this money is spent on salaries and benefits for teachers and classified staff, principals and administrators, all of the adults that are responsible for educating all PAUSD students, which is both our legal responsibility and our mission as a K-12 school district. And if student outcomes are our measure, as they should be, then for decades, I would argue, we have not fulfilled this mission. And I would argue that means we haven't been responsible stewards of all that money. Because we have created and perpetuated an educational system where hundreds of millions of dollars that's supposed to be spent on all students has instead educated only some of them effectively. $300 million, but at the beginning of this school year, only 47% of African American third graders were reading at or above grade level, and the numbers were even worse for Pacific Islander, Latino, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities. And in addition to not being taught to read, these children also have been subjected to othering, microaggressions, and blatant racism in our schools. To me, it seems safe to say that these students are not getting their fair share of the $300 million we are spending, and if I were their parents, I would want my money back. But we can't give you your money back, but we can and we should be held accountable for spending it more effectively. So we still have a very, very long way to go, but these results show us that we really are finally heading in the right direction. So I want to thank you, Ms. Reynolds, and our teachers and our principals, and particularly our students for all your work this year. And I want to say that you have unequivocally called BS on all the decades-old narratives that we have used to let the school district off the hook for not doing our job. Look at how we've improved education for all students with just this one initiative. Imagine what we can do if we continue on this path. Imagine if we double down, if we accept the canaries as truth tellers instead of suspending them and diagnosing them with learning disabilities at rates exponentially higher than their peers. And imagine if psychological safety was not just a term thrown around by adults, but the lived reality of all of our students. How much might they thrive? How might they upend all our expectations of what a public school can and should be? These results make me optimistic that we are actually on our way to finding out. So again, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone involved in this initiative. And Dr. Austin, I think you're going to need to propose some new goals to us.
I'm not going to belabor the point, although I could. I'll say this. When I was talking to Dr. Austin earlier about these results, the first thing I said was, you know, there are times when it's really important for the board to exercise oversight, get in deep, ask good questions, shift the direction of things. Then there are times, like when I saw this report, where all I wanted to do was touch it as little as possible. Because it was like, I don't want to mess with the secret sauce. You know, I don't want to mess with the progress that's being done and put a finger on a scale that may shift things. And it reminded me of this great Teddy Roosevelt quote about governance, which I think is, I mean, it's really important for me as a board member to remember this perspective, which is, you know, a good leader has the good sense to pick people who are good enough to execute his goals, but who has the restraint to stop himself from meddling in those people accomplishing those goals. And there are times when I think we as a board have meddled, and that's had good results. This is a time when we ought not to meddle, and only to say, great work, you have executed the direction of the board, and I guess that's the highest praise I could give anyone on staff. So thank you. And of course, high expectations for the future.
Ms. Siegel.
I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank staff, teachers, reading specialists, children, and families. This is incredible and significant gains. I am honored to be part of the school district and on this board to witness these gains. I got it all printed out, and I kept looking, whoa, at each page, I'm like, oh, it just keeps getting better and better. And then I thought, maybe I'm not good at reading graphs because this is incredible, right? And then I checked and checked. So I'm echoing, what other people have said. I look forward to next year seeing the same assessment tool being used to be able to measure year-to-year progress. That's really exciting. I look forward to increasing the target goal for everyone because we have seen such significant gains in each and every group. And I just wanted to say a sincere thank you to you and to everyone involved.
Thank you. I'm going to echo thank you to all of our teachers, our aides, our principals, our interventionists, our specialists. I mean, everyone who did this. I feel like it's really important to acknowledge that a year ago, there was a lot of struggle. There were some staff that were super happy that we were going to take a different course. There were some staff that were very upset. I was very upset that they were very upset. And I think what it came, and now here we are a year later with outstanding gains that just even a year ago, I never could have imagined. And obviously, let's acknowledge we're not there yet. With some of our groups, still half of them we are not serving the way we have to serve, or 40% of them or 30% of them. We have more work to do. But when I first joined this board, I was told, yeah, you know what, these kids aren't learning. Like there's something wrong with them. There's only two possibilities, right? Either it's the kids or it's the system. And I do not believe it's the kids, so it's us. And for years and years and years trying to figure out how we could make some traction and how we could make a difference and how we could better serve all students. And it felt like we were spinning our wheels and we were kind of we're trying this. So while I understand last year was rough and I didn't love the way it all happened, definitely what I am on board with was trying something new because what we had been doing wasn't working. And we really threw the kitchen sink at it, right? We tried a lot of different new things. So we can't say, oh, well, OG was the magic bullet or adopting a new literacy curriculum was we did so much, right? We made this a laser-focused goal and did a lot of different things. And it would be awesome if we could really identify this is the thing that made the difference, because then we could tell other districts and they would know, oh, that's what they did. Because we don't have resources to do 15 things, we could do one thing. And as much as I would love to be able to look at other districts and say, here's the silver bullet, what matters here is that I don't really care what it was. What I know is we threw the kitchen sink at it and something is making a difference. And no longer are we looking at students as problems. We are identifying the district practices or policies or biases or whatever as the problems and changing it. So congratulations to every single human that has worked with our students and all of our students for their hard work. We definitely need some more goals. And to me, this relates to the SWIFT plan in that in our goals, we have academic goals and we have these goals of belonging and these goals of being a valued part of our community. And given that we haven't solved this other problem yet, I think we're working on it, I am even impressed with the progress we've made. Because if you feel othered and you don't feel a valued part of the community, it's really hard to have access to your education and to do well. But here we are making a huge difference already. So I'm thinking when we double down and we really, really solve the systemic biases that are in our district, among our staff, our students, our board, our administration, our community, everyone, we've all got them, right? When we really can double down on those, I can't imagine. I think demographics will no longer predict success. You will, that won't be a factor anymore. So thank you to everyone. And I look forward to, next year and seeing what your new goals are. Anything else on this particular item? Okay, I think we're going on to dual enrollment, correct?
Now it's going to hurt Dr. Che's feelings if we don't clap for her after every word she says. Yeah. All right, I was kind of joking. We don't have to do that, but Dr. Che, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Austin. We had a very robust ad hoc committee for dual enrollment. Out of 12 committees that we had, dual enrollment was one of our focus in order to identify structure and support existing and as well as expansion of offerings. There were 9 committee members, including counselors, teachers, administrators, and community members as well. We want to thank for their time and commitment towards this dual enrollment committee. So for dual enrollment, we established MOU with Foothill in 2019 under AB 288 in order to support college and career access pathway. We're serving over 340 students under that MOU. This includes child development, sports medicine, stage tech, and a lot of CTE courses. The purpose of CCAP, which is College and Career Pathway Partnership, is to expand dual enrollment, especially for students who may not already be college-bound and who are underrepresented in higher education. The goal of CCAP agreement is to develop seamless pathway from high school to community college for career technical education or transfer preparation, to improve high school graduation rate, or to help high school students achieve college and career readiness. One of the charge of the dual enrollment committee was to re-envision our mission and vision statement. They came up with things like including creating seamless transition from high school to college, providing opportunity to earn college credit, gain confidence in their academic abilities, as well as reducing costs for their post-secondary education, as well as helping students succeed in college and beyond by providing them with the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in their academic and professional pursuits. For many of them, this is their first exposure to college credit course, and we're trying very hard to provide a safe, welcoming environment for them on our campus. Also, I want to thank all of our dual enrollment teachers that are going extra miles to coordinate with Foothill and working with our counselors as well as district office. So we're working with Foothill to provide some stipend for them. That was part of their the recommendation from the committee. Foothill is also willing to provide instructional material for the funding of the materials, such as textbooks and lab materials, because a lot of these courses are hands-on courses. The final recommendation from the dual enrollment committee is that they would like to leverage existing steering committee structure so that there is a process for if there needs to be a new course or there needs to be curricular alignment, and also consider implication for post-secondary options as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have several community comments. Some familiar names here. Benjamin Vecchio, Albert Lee, and Ezra Furtado Tuori. And then Devin Ardeshna is fourth.
Thank you again. The idea of not allowing students to take academic courses that they were ready for, as Gunn and now Pally's admin have done with MVC, which was classified as dual enrollment until really recently, is antithetical to the spirit of public education. To teach students that taking math classes is what causes them anxiety is more than counterproductive. Rather than telling students to follow the passion, in this case, we say, why are you interested in this? You must be pushed by your parents. Why don't you slow down, try something else? I hear robotics is fun. Take a break. Some argue that the very act of having multivariable class available intrinsically is harmful to others, so much that it cannot be offered. Public education is where all students should have the chance to follow their intellectual interests and passions, not telling them that there are things that should be available to families with abilities to do things outside of the public system, going to a private school, and taking courses at Johns Hopkins that cost thousands of dollars, doing summer programs that cost $10,000. We deliberately hobble these students, especially those like me who are lucky enough to be able to do things outside. It just hobbles these considerable number of students who want to continue learning. Now, we as, let's be honest, privileged, students don't want to be focused on. We just want to be allowed to follow our passions at PAUSD. All of this is why I'm skeptical about the intent of this report. However, I'm hopeful the board will continue working with students towards promoting a satisfactory conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Albert Lee, then Ezra, then Devin.
Hi all. It is clear that the current methods of communication surrounding MVC are inadequate. Therefore, a regularly held committee where students and staff can voice concerns, questions, and needs would help correct the confusion that permeates discussion. While everyone at the district has been doing their best to maintain clear avenues for information, the current structure is simply unable to meet current necessities. I'd like to thank Ms. DeBrienza for meeting with us, and to quickly mention that we'd love to meet with other community members for further discussion. During that meeting, Ms. DeBrienza mentioned difficulty in addressing questions separately, especially on a when-asked basis, because a response that answers one question or one need may not answer other questions or needs that have appeared in the meantime. A committee for students and staff would create highly accessible communication that can address questions about math education and are highly necessary to address the needs and voices of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ezra, and then Devin.
Hi again. First of all, we're very appreciative of the efforts that Dr. Cho made to make sure that every student can register for both the PALI MVC course and other Foothill courses. Dr. Cho said that Foothill promised to accommodate every high school student who registers for their courses, which I wasn't aware about earlier. So thanks for clarifying that point and making sure that we can take the classes. However, unfortunately, I haven't seen this in practice, as I wasn't able to take a differential equations class that I signed up for this summer, despite reaching out to the Foothill PAUSD dual enrollment coordinator, the Foothill STEM dean, the professor teaching the class, and Dr. Cho, as well as filling out the forms for the course 1 month in advance and satisfying all the prerequisites. Furthermore, the Foothill coordinator for PAUSD said that high school students will continue to get last priority to sign up for classes at Foothill, which essentially renders asynchronous options for the MVC class not accessible. So it's great that the district claims an effort is being made to increase accessibility, but at this point, we see little evidence of such an effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin?
Hello. I'm excited I get 2 minutes. So I guess I'll just preface this by saying, dual enrollment is wonderful. I think we've seen the benefits in our district with the expansion of dual enrollment offerings. We've seen the numbers from the introduction of CCAP legislation and the adoption of CCAP partnerships, across the state of California, and increasing community college enrollment rates, increasing UC and CSU transfer rates. So the work that's being done there is wonderful, and I'm super happy the district's doing that. That said, I do have a couple concerns about how dual enrollment's being considered in PAUSD. The first, which I've mentioned before, is that PAUSD's narrow definition of dual enrollment doesn't really match EdCode, specifically section 76004. Dual enrollment is simply whenever high school students take college credit classes, and they're so-called special part-time students, and there are many different ways to implement this. You have CCAP courses, non-CCAP, you can have different teaching models, high school teacher, college teacher, co-teaching, so it's a very broad definition. I'm also concerned that PAUSD is using the term articulation, particularly because articulated high school courses are not dual enrollment. They fall under a separate set of regulations, and actually students must participate in a credit by examination process for articulated courses. And these courses don't go through the same oversight with the college that dual enrollment courses do. Also, PAUSD appears to be including dual enrollment courses in the UC A to G list, and that doesn't actually follow UC guidelines. Dual enrollment courses are to be reported as a college course and not actually be on the high school list. So I think we probably should look at that. Lastly, I want to reiterate that there is not actually really any credentialing issue for counting these classes, college classes, towards GPA. The relevant laws have not changed in many years. And so I don't think the CDE appreciates being thrown under the bus for what is basically a local decision. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Colleagues, shall we go back this way again? Ms. Siegel.
I wanted to thank the committee. I want to express a heartfelt thank you to each and every student who has spoken at the past board meetings. When I was a student here, I definitely did not have the courage to speak at the board meeting, and so I want to say that I heard you and it was very much appreciated. I also want to thank parents and staff who have spoken. and thank all of our dual enrollment teachers. I'm definitely in support of the stipend for teachers who teach dual enrollment courses, as it is a very difficult course to teach and involves a lot of extra work and communication. The statements made by the principals, counselors, and math instructional leads at the last board meeting also provided me with a much needed and much appreciated viewpoint and has helped to shape and formulate my thoughts. The math teachers who have been teaching in this district for decades who spoke have valuable experience and insight. And I also want to personally thank Jung for taking time to speak with me on the phone about this complicated issue. I researched it last year at the CSBA conference and attended a session on it, but it's a very complex issue, so I want to thank you for personally taking time to speak with me. This whole experience has led to me wondering if this is like a process versus a product issue. I've spoken to, or at least offered a phone call to each and every community member who's reached out to me with concerns on this topic. And I'm confident that the breakdown in communication would not have happened and families would be more understanding had we discussed and partnered with our community to find solutions. I feel like what was really hard is we had lots of people talking and lots of people speaking, but I think if there had been an in-person meeting where stakeholders and staff, and especially students, could be heard and feel like they were partnered, I think that would have been helpful. So I would like to see PAUSD offer an in-person meeting with parents, students, stakeholders, staff, just to help clarify the offerings and rationales and brainstorm possible solutions. I've found that when it's done, even if it's just once on the phone or once in person with people present, it can really go a long way to build trust versus, getting, emails back and forth or open forum. And with all of that said, I think collaboration and partnership are essential to build trust in community. I hope this is an area of focus for next year. The demand for this course has only grown over the last decade and will likely continue to grow. So I encourage that we get creative and collaborate on possible solutions that are supported by our teachers, that are supported by our staff, but also doesn't tax students' mental health by having to sacrifice after-school jobs, sports, and clubs. So I just want there to be a fruitful discussion where everybody's at the table so we can try to come up with solutions that work well for everyone and where communication can be as clear as possible. That's all.
Mr. Dart.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I have a slightly different perspective, which is that, I appreciate the ad hoc committees, all of them, and specifically this one, because, this isn't something that we had previously in the same robust form as we have now. And when we started these ad hoc committees, and as we've seen the results, it struck me as a great move in the direction of the type of focused stakeholder perspective that we've been seeking for a few years and saying we need community input, but it's very difficult to figure out how to get that community input because as someone said, as a colleague of mine said, folks who speak at board meetings, it takes a certain level of motivation, courage. It's a self-selecting group. And kudos to everybody who speaks at board meetings, because it's not easy to stand up in front of all these people and talk about an issue that you're passionate about. It is not a representative way to seek feedback from the community of 15,000 stakeholders. So the question is, how do we do that? And I think the ad hoc committees are the step that the district has taken. And so I'm actually I'm gratified to see the results of the ad hoc. Can it be better? Of course, everything can be better. And I appreciate Dr. DeBrianza meeting with our students in the community to sort of form that relationship between the board or board members and students that I see as separate from the ad hoc committees, which are working committees composed of experts and voices from the community that can deliver us real concrete updates on programmatic solutions. So I hear what my colleague is saying, what Ms. Siegel is saying about asking for feedback. I know that being on the board for 5 years, we've struggled with the question of what that means. And my colleagues have been here even longer asking that question. So to me, the ad hoc committees are an answer to that, and one that I'm happy about, and one that I'm glad that we're going to continue to see. And thank you for all your work, and thank you for your engagement with the community, because I know a lot of folks had questions, and I heard from many community members that you were very responsive and very respectful. So appreciate it.
So to the point about the ad hoc committee, you presented out, we do, my understanding of this is CCAP, that's our dual enrollment plan. Which is the mission of that, as you outlined here, is expanding dual enrollment for students who may not already be college-bound or who are underrepresented in higher education. There is an option for non-CCAP, which the definition of that is advanced scholastic and vocational training. So although the recommendations did not specifically say we are recommending only CCAP and not non-CCAP dual enrollment options, are we to assume that because there was not a non-CCAP option presented, that you are in effect only recommending that we stick with one track only? We could do both, right? We could have non-CCAP, but that would be a sort of another set of regulations, contracts, logistics.
That is correct. Currently, we don't have non-CCAP agreement with Foothill. The reason why we started with CCAP and the reason there was a push from the legislation to push for CCAP is because for non-CCAP, there have been a lot of opportunities that students have been taking advantage of, such as APs and other courses. So they were already taking those courses. The CCAP really gained a lot of momentum nationally just to provide that first college experience for students who normally is scared to take AP, and there's another way of being exposed to college. So that's why.
So to I think, piggyback on my colleague, Mr. Rapp's point, we had an ad hoc committee. These are the recommendations it came back with. They could have come back with a recommendation that we proceed with CCAP and we proceed with a non-CCAP option. That is not being presented to us. Well, at least those aren't the present. That isn't the recommendation of the committee.
No.
Staff may still come back to us with that recommendation, but currently, right now, that's not what the committee. That was stakeholders that got together, that met multiple times, that had community input.
Correct.
That is not what that entity that was designed in order to get community and stakeholder feedback on dual enrollment did not come back with a recommendation for non-CCAP.
No, they really focused on how they can improve the current CCAP, given the counselor group, teacher group, so they felt like that was a need.
Okay. So staff still could come back to us, but that's not what the ad hoc committee did. Recommendations are.
Correct.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd want to clarify that.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. Thank you. So just to clarify, so non-CCAP has been around for a long time. You know, CCAP is a relatively new program, new legislation, and non-CCAP has been available for enrichment programs for.
So I wouldn't say it's non-CCAP, but there was not many guidelines, so everything was kind of loosey and thrown under dual enrollment. But with the new legislation that came with AB 288, they came up with this thing that in order to establish dual enrollment, you need to establish a formal contract with the community college. Before, that wasn't the case. Okay. So that contract was between either non-CCAP or CCAP.
So yeah, I just want to clarify, because, I mean, we're focusing on CCAP because CCAP's a big new thing, gets a lot more kids. It addresses the need for underrepresented kids to get the on-ramp into community college and ultimately four-year degrees if they choose. And it requires a fairly heavy lift on the part of both the high school district and the community college district to, create these pathways that work. It doesn't preclude doing non-CCAP activities, enrichment activities like we've done in the past, and I assume we're going to continue to do in the future. It just wasn't the priority of what this committee saw we needed to work on.
Correct.
Right, because there are other options like APs, like you said, and nothing would preclude us from offering other courses in conjunction with Foothill or some other community college if we chose, right?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
And you could come back to us with those recommendations at some point if you want to, right? I mean, we're not going to direct that, I guess, but. Or just do, well, we don't do any right now, though, right? We don't have any non-CCAP courses now.
We don't have that MOU with Foothill. We never established one.
Okay.
Focus has been on CCAP.
But just, can I just clarify?
Yeah.
But you could just do one if you want. I mean, you don't need board authorization to go do that.
We will need a board approval.
Yeah, but once you've done it and got it served up.
Correct.
Just like we approve every other contract, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. First, thank you. Thank you to all the committee members who did this work and for expanding this, right? I mean, I think just in the past couple of weeks at the showcases and at graduation, I met so many students that are in different pathways that really got a lot out of their experience and were really excited about the college classes they had taken and their little extra cord at graduation. So thank you for that. I get sort of the same question that's been asked some, but I guess I'm wondering is there anything that precludes us, right? If we suddenly had a teacher that was interested in teaching, say, multivariable calculus, I think that would be a conversation in a lot of ways because we've had counselors express some concern. There are a lot of different things, but that we'd have to work out. But it's not impossible to add it if the district so desired, right? It's not a CCAP pathway, but it's possible to have other classes, whether it be multivariable calculus or something else, in different pathways.
Yeah.
Right, that are not pathways, just that we could offer.
Yes, we can.
But we'd have to enter into a new agreement with Foothill.
Foothill,
a
yes.
non-CCAP.
Correct.
Agreement. Okay, thank you. And one thing I'd be really interested in, Dr. Lopez, I think, would be if we could just get an update at some point as to how many different classes our Pally and our gun students take outside. We've had students come up and talk about following their passions, and they're really passionate about a topic and about a subject area, and they want to take a class in it. And I think that there are a lot of our high school students that take classes that they're passionate about outside of our school because we just don't offer that class. But I think it would be really interesting to know, like, how many a year do that, and are they core academic classes? Are they languages? Are they extracurriculars? How many of those classes just do our students take outside of school because they're interested in it or for whatever reason? I think that we know that because they come back and tell us on the transcript, right?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Because the answers can be very different depending on which way you want us to look at this. Okay. If you're talking about community college courses, that will give us one answer. If you want to know any third party, that will give us a different answer.
I'm interested in third party, just because I'm interested in this idea of like who pursues, right, in their own time, that when you have a sport or an activity or a job or other academics, what you pursue and why, and how many of our students, we don't offer it here at Pally or Gun, so they go outside and maybe it's before school or after school or on weekends or asynchronous or evenings or whatever. They're pursuing some interest of theirs.
So I missed the very most important part of your answer.
Any third party.
Anything.
Any third party.
Okay, we can do that.
I mean, that's my curiosity.
Yeah,
Maybe you want both.
That was exactly sort of the questions I was getting at, because the one thing that I think of is all of the students we know who go to Pally who want to take German. I mean, this is always coming up. I know like 5 students personally who literally thought about going to Gun. And so sort of that, yeah, and I don't think they're taking it at community college. I think they're doing Language Bird or something else. Yeah, they're finding some other way to do it. But it feels like if we need to have a more robust conversation about all the different programs. I mean, I think multivariable calculus is specific because we used to offer it and now we don't. So we sort of know the students that are interested in because we have a history of offering it and students signed up. I assume if we offered German, we would have a big robust group of students who would immediately want to sign up for it. So I just want to make sure we're not missing.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know
a larger
what
conversation.
classes, how many are taken outside? What are they taking outside? We might not be able to know when they're taking them, but I do think that a lot of students pursue an interest outside of school because we happen not to offer things. Obviously, we can't offer everything. And sadly, with declining enrollment, we probably have fewer offerings we're going to be able to make, if there's not enough enrollment to run a class, right?
So now I have one more clarifier.
Uh-oh.
The distinction between they're taking it because we don't offer it versus they're taking a third party. Third party could be literally over 1,000, okay? Just based on what I've seen on spreadsheets. If we want third party, again, that's one answer. If we want anything third party, that's an answer. If we want only community colleges, that's an answer. But if we want to know only classes that are taken that we don't offer, that's a different answer.
Because you're saying there's some critical mass of students who we offer a class, but they decide to take it outside.
I would say that's going to be the overwhelming majority, actually. But that's a little bit, just through looking at the spreadsheets, that's not that I have the data at my fingertips.
All right, so this is not intended to be like a huge overwhelming task, but sometime, I don't need it next week, right? But I think it would be really useful for us to have a sense of, because if there is some class we're offering and the majority of students, we offer one section of it at school and there's 50 kids taking it outside, why are most going outside? I mean, that's just another question.
We can do that. I just want to make sure we're responsive and we know the most precise question we can get, the better our response will be for you.
And just especially because we have to enter into a separate MOU, and I was looking at that chart, and there's it's not just an MOU. There's a lot of requirements on the teachers. I mean, it's a big thing.
It's a big MOU.
Ms. DeBrien's question was, assuming we had a teacher, well, that's like a big assumption, right? So assuming we don't have a teacher, because I think most of these classes we don't have a teacher, which is why we don't offer them, what are we looking at? Like, what kind of logistics are we looking at? That would, and if we're going to do that, are there 4 different classes that we know students would be interested in, which might make it more worthwhile for us to sort of go down that path?
Yeah, the legislation really distinguishes what we can do over non-CCAP versus CCAP. One of the major things is with non-CCAP, we cannot close the section to just our students. We have to welcome Foothill students on our campus. So that's part of the legislation. It is really geared towards to help students first experience of college exposure. That's why there are some advantages for not CCAP students.
Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry. Some quick follow-ups, just kind of going back to my having a meeting. I noted that the committee, what kind of made me think of this is the committee only had 1 student. And I just think that student voice is so important. And so if our ad hoc committee only has 1 student, I do feel like that's not enough student voice for a student course. For me, I think the question would be how many community college courses. I think that's very different than third-party vendor. I think that's a whole different topic because this specific class is the next step in their math. So this is, I think it's very different than an outside vendor. This is, if they accelerate by skipping 1 grade, then their senior year, this is actually their next class in that sequence. And so I just think it's important that we're differentiating between outside third-party vendors and community college courses that students are taking because they are not offered on our campus. So I think that's what I would focus on.
I would imagine that we would break it down, right? We'd see both of those. I mean, there are many classes in our district that terminate when kids could take another year of it, but we don't offer it. It's not just math. There's lots of different subjects and lots of different, all the languages for sure. Kids finish them before they're a senior and they want to do the next thing. But I think there's a lot of those. So I would imagine that if you come back to us, you will sort them by these are community college classes, these are language classes.
2 things. I just
more
consulted
fine.
quickly with Dr. Lopez.
Yeah.
We think we've got enough of the information to get it back. It may not be exactly precise. It'll be good enough for this exercise.
Yeah.
But when it goes back to engaging with students, I think it is a trap to make that a district committee. I think that is much, much better served running through the high schools, allowing them to do it where they have the students on campus during a school day with counselors and teachers. So that would be my strong recommendation.
You're saying communication between students and ILs, counselors, teachers, principal, about course offerings and whatnot.
Yes, because while we're always going to have a smaller number because of a million reasons, including our committees are after school hours, right? We're not pulling kids out of school to come over here. The school sites, not only is it more appropriate, I think it's something we need to get back to, putting those on the school sites. And that can get us a broader representation, also better product and more appropriate at the same time.
Great. Okay, is that all? Okay, I think this might be a record for the latest we've ever done the consent calendar. But I believe the consent calendar is next. And I am going to start by, before someone makes a motion, we have, I believe, we have 2 comments for the SEL item, which is, I need help finding it right now. Scope of work, authorization. What is it, O? Yes, O. Okay, so can I get a motion that considers that 5O is going to have a community comment?
I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of O.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay, so the consent calendar is approved except for O, which means O is going to be our next item. It is sort of now classified as 6A1. O. There is no presentation on it because it was on consent. So I'm going to call on our 2 commenters. We'll have 2 minutes each. We have Lakeisha Phillips-Marshall and then Eamon Reynolds.
Good evening, board. My name is Lakeisha Phillips-Marshall, and I have 2 children in the 1st and 4th grade at Escondido. What I'd like to speak on tonight is the social emotional learning SEL of all students in PAUSD. Our children are being harmed by the lack of accountability of the trusted adults they spend time with daily. For my family, this looks like my 8-year-old wanting to kill himself because no one would protect him from a school bully 2 years in a row. But SEL is bigger than just my children and the students of PAUSD. Given the recent events that took place at Escondido with the use of the N-word, the lack of mental health services and communication to both the students and families is unacceptable. We need accountability. The work is hard and we all make mistakes. The important question is, how do we recover from those mistakes? We need to start with empathy. When we exercise empathy, we are all able to understand how our actions land on the other person. For changes to happen, it must involve all of us. Allyship is critical to lasting, meaningful change. It starts with building relationships. I think the second step elementary curriculum being adopted as the SEL supplemental curriculum is the first step and should be incorporated into the PAUSD promise. All families deserve this, and we are counting on you to step up and implement it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eamon Reynolds.
Hello, I'm Iman Reynolds. I have 4 students in the district, and how will the second step transformative SEL curriculum help my kids? How is accountability measured, and will it be included in the SWIFT policy? In the incident of hate speech at Escondido, which my student was impacted by thoroughly, there was a blatant lack of cultural sensitivity and appropriate policy that does not further traumatize all the students involved. There was no opportunity or process to process the gravity of the hate speech, the negligence of the principal to provide appropriate supports, processing, feeling, and healing. And where were the restorative tools, not just disciplinary tools, for the community that was impacted by his classmates who are also impacted as witnesses to their friends being hurt? How will this curriculum help? Social emotional learning is important to have the vocabulary, to speak the words, to deal with the feelings, to create better outcomes and behaviors, and understanding the generational pains that are carried with hate speech and the deep wounds that are inflicted when they're said. Can our kids do that on our own? We can't. Add your memories from the times throughout your years in school, even back to elementary. As an African-American family, we recall very vividly the first time the N-word was wielded. Imagine in your space if you were empowered with the support and social emotional tools to navigate the things that occurred in your life at school. We can empower our kids to do that now. Does this curriculum do that work? The elementary kids we have become the middle school kids, that become the high school kids, that move on into this world as adults, that fill the seats you will empty one day and become the change makers for the next generation of this greater community. Will this curriculum show the students of PAUSD what it means to stand in very hard conversations, tackle the truth of how broken systems impact the community? When we neglect to learn and provide the tools and the vocabulary for navigating our social, emotional, and lived experiences, we are not equipped to handle the crucial conversations and change necessary to support the vision we seek in this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, this is up for action. Why don't we get a motion on the table, and then anyone can make any comments if they want to.
I move approval of item O.
A second.
Okay, so we have on the table to approve it. Does anybody have any comments? Great. Yes. Got on.
Children who don't feel safe physically and emotionally are going to struggle to succeed academically, period. Thank you to the parents who just spoke. SEL is not just about race, and at the same time, it is very much about race. I'm not going to repeat everything I said before. I'll just say that the experiences of these children, their parents just related to us, are telling us something about our educational ecosystem. And we know in our schools right now that kids are harassed and excluded and bullied and worse on the basis of race, gender identity, neurodiversity, income level, and even nothing at all. And, you know, I do want to say our kids are growing up in this community and they listen to adults compare cars and fancy ski vacations. And some speak publicly, even at these board meetings, cutting each other down for lack of a college degree or a fancy enough pedigree. They grow up internalizing the societal pecking order that they're growing up in. And so we shouldn't be surprised by the way this plays out, both externally in the way they view and treat their peers, and internally in the way they view and treat themselves. So we shouldn't be surprised, but we really also can't use it as an excuse for not fulfilling our duty to create schools where students feel safe and can thrive academically and emotionally. And I want to say, in his end of the year update, I wrote this down so I'd get it right, Dr. Austin wrote that we must consider the potential consequences of building competitive excellence on an unstable foundation. Inclusion, civility, mental health, and positive relationships are still the cornerstone of a happy life. Our community can only be as good as the worst day in the life of a student. If they are disparaged, then we are disparaged. If they are sad, then we are sad. If they are friendless, then we are friendless. So I really hope and expect that we're going to approve this curriculum. It's certainly only the first step, but it is a crucial step, I think, to stabilizing our foundation and healing us.
Okay, Ms. Siegel.
Sorry, really quickly, one of my questions was, we are a K or a TK through, or a PK through 12 district, and SEL and good SEL matters. And so a question I have is, we have this language being used in elementary school that hopefully children will absorb and take with them to middle school, but why are we not, do we have an SEL curriculum in place for middle school? Because at least my experience in middle school and from what I've heard from many different families is that can be a time of increased bullying. So that was my question about middle school.
Thank you. I'd love to answer that. Actually, our middle schools are implementing Second Step at this time. They will continue to explore Second Step into next year. The problem we currently found with it is that it didn't go deep enough, and some of the kids found it a little bit cheesy. So part of our work with the committee is to really look at how we can make that more engaging and go deeper for our students in middle school.
Oh, thank you. Our board's focus and my focus in particular for a long time has been mental health, and it's been equity, and SEL is really the intersection between the two. I mean, it's the linchpin. And I mean, I'm very supportive of this, and I think we're all probably going to vote to approve it. But all I really wanted to say was it was very impressive to see our speakers who have had to go through what too many in our district have had to go through, speak with just a great amount of grace and empathy and optimism in terms of encouraging us to move forward. And to me, the SEL curriculum, I mean, at its core, is going to allow us to graduate students who are going to leave our district being able to model that same kind of grace to others and to themselves. Or as my 3-year-old says, to be kindful and mindful. And so, yes, I do hope that this is the curriculum. And if it's not, then we as the board are going to make sure that we're exercising oversight and making sure that, the next best thing is put in place. So that's all. Let's vote. Well, after people speak.
Yeah. Do I get to go? Mr. Collins, anything? Okay. I want to thank the speakers for coming to speak up today. I'm sure that it wasn't easy. And for many, it feels, I think, an intractable issue, right? If you have been hearing for decades, if you have been experiencing something like this for decades and asking for change for decades, it's probably pretty hard to imagine that we're really serious about making change now. Hopefully seeing some ESRI improvements might convince people that no, we're really on board here. But I think that an SEL curriculum alone obviously can't solve our issues of bias and inequity and, all of these issues. Obviously, a good SEL curriculum is a good first step, and it sounds like we're being told by staff that this is a good first step. I do hope that the middle school either settles on a way to kind of make some improvements to this one or finds another one. But I know for a couple of years, we talked about having some continuity all the way through so that kids have the same language and the same practices and whatnot. Because as we know, middle school gets even tougher. We're really committed to closing the achievement gap. We just saw a great report that showed some good progress on that. But also we've said from the beginning, it's not just about the test scores, right? It's also about this sense of inclusion. And where everyone has access to their education and everyone has the supports they need and everyone is treated like they belong. For parents who have seen this happen over and over again, and not see any change, I imagine that we don't have a lot of trust, and all we can do is actually do the work, right? I don't think that it is worth us putting energy into saying, hey, we're really serious. Let's just do the work. Let's do the work and the community will see that we're doing it. I think the problem is here that as hard as ESRI was, this work is harder. This is the bias. This is the systems work that people don't want to look at. This is the systems work that is really hard to do and really uncomfortable. It's the work that helps the board and the administration and the principals and the parents and the students see that we all have biases and that some of those biases are really harmful to some of our students, especially when they aren't a critical mass of them in our district and they feel othered just by that nature alone. So this isn't easy and it's not going to be easy. And there are some in this district that are working so hard on this. Just 2 weeks ago, last week, we had a big celebration of our equity leadership coalition cohort. And to see, thank you for the everyone. Equity, I got equity. To see the work that is happening at so many of our sites and how many of our staff are so committed to this work. And I especially liked, Ms. Conaway, that you gave some awards to some people that didn't miss a single meeting all year. And I cannot imagine being a principal, a teacher, an aide, and working a whole long day in a really hard job, and then never once missing the ELLC meeting. There are people that are doing this work that want to do this work, that want to make a difference for kids that we have continued to fail. And then there's people that don't want to do the work, either because it's really hard and uncomfortable or because they don't acknowledge that it's work that needs to be done. But I think that this board is saying that is a part of the SWIFT plan and that is a part of the work that has to be done. And again, we need to put our foot on the gas and double down on this work. And if it's uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable. And I, for one, am happy to say, wow, I really screwed that up, and wow, here are my biases. It's hard to do, but I think that when we model it, is when it starts to become more comfortable. And I also want to acknowledge that we're not the only influencers of students in our district, right? Our students are on social media, our students watch TV and movies, our students are online, our students have parents' biases because we all have them, and they bring all that to school too. So it's not like we can solve this issue alone. And I am really curious. I don't know that there needs to be a big budget line item to this. Maybe you're going to come tell us that there does need to be. But I am really curious to know in the coming meetings, I guess we're looking at the fall, what sorts of things are planned, not just for our students, but for our staff, for our community, for the board. What kinds of things we're doing to really just move the needle on this, because this is the single hardest thing I think we will ever do. I am all in for adopting this curriculum, and there is so much more besides the SEL formal curriculum that we need to do, and I hope that we continue to see it come out in the SWIFT plan. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the SEL curriculum?
Aye.
Aye. Great, wonderful, thank you. We can take a break. Can we make it like a 3-minute break?
Oh, maybe staff needs it.
All right, 5-minute break. We'll come back at 8:58. Welcome back. It is 8:59. Excuse me, having a little snack. 7A, Dr. Austin.
Mr.
Discussion
Bahadur
item.
Singh has 20 seconds to frame up this item.
6A. Yes.
I
This
went right.
Real quick, this came before the board at the last meeting. It requires the two meeting rule. So this is the declaration of need. The only change is there's an amendment to this item to include permits for art and English.
I move acceptance of the item as presented.
I second.
Great, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay. 6B.
Mr. Holm, now that you saw how we're going to run the second half of this meeting,
A lot of pressure. Okay, so our item is approval of a resolution and award a contract for paving improvements at Nixon Elementary School. This one's a little bit quirky. This is a pretty standard maintenance project. We're just repaving. We bid it as the Informal Bidding Act, which is less formal than a traditional bid. Usually it works for these small paving projects and such. But it has a cap on $200,000. We thought the project was going to be about 130, but paving prices have gone through the roof. And there is an allowance in the Informal Bidding Act that if it goes over 200, but not over 212, 500, I think the limit is, the board by resolution can accept the bid. So we just squeaked under the 212 limit, but it does require a board resolution to accept the bid of 209, 200.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we?
Well, let's get a motion on the table.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Second.
Great, now it's on the table. Go ahead.
Can we clarify that this is a first reading of this item, correct?
The first reading, we actually took the permission to bid to you guys previously. So normally this would have just been accepting the award, and as a maintenance project, it would have been consent. It's just weird because we just crossed this threshold, so it now requires a board resolution.
Okay. Sure. And I think in addition, since the two-meeting rule has an exception for routine contract approvals, right? Yeah. I think it would qualify under that exception. So I just wanted to clarify for anyone who might be watching that this in fact does not require the two-meeting rule. That was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Great, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Now we are at 7A. Oh, this is when I get to do my public hearing.
That's part of the job.
you're so excited. Yes,
Okay, do I start?
you do.
Okay, for our annual LCAP public hearing, I am opening the hearing. I believe there are comments. Should I take them before I close the public hearing, or I should take them while it's open? We've never had one during. So I'm going to take them and then I'll close the meeting.
That's fine. Yeah, they just get one shot at it. It's fine.
Well, right, but usually we open it, close it, and then we discuss it, and I don't know why. So, right. Okay, so Edith Cohen and Stephen Davis. Edith Cohen might be on Zoom.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Yep.
Okay, so I looked at the LCAP report. It's a long report. It seems designed to satisfy a legal reporting requirement. It's less designed to be helpful. Some metrics or indicators are very poorly constructed. Information is presented in selective ways. So one issue is that the report mentions the use of NWIA map in the elementary school and MDTP assessments at the middle school, but these results are never reported to the public. Instead, they use the SBAC results, difference between last year and this year, but last year the participation was very low, so it's completely meaningless. So I will tell you what I see in the MDTP data. So first, let's start with the students that entered high school. So let's look at the students that placed in algebra in 9th grade this year. And according to the MDTP, 90% of these students scored less than 75% on the MDTP. They are completely not ready to algebra. And I don't know what support they are getting, but they are placed in a course they are not ready for. As for the student that plays in geometry, ninth graders this year, 50% are not ready for geometry. 30% are very ready, 20% are in the middle. And in that course, 120 students land down. I don't know even if they were informed how unready they were. For middle school algebra, 23% are utterly unready for the course. We have been through that. It's not okay to place the accelerator.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Mr. Davis?
Good evening. A couple real quick comments. One, I'm not sure when this was updated. The unfortunate collapse of students with disabilities, chronic absenteeism that has been reported onto the board didn't make it into the LCAP, so I don't know if that's a document synchronization problem. But the other thing is, which is a general problem, which is the use of California's terrible blue, red, yellow thing, as if it meant anything except for whether Tony Thurmond, I guess, is going to give you a bad day sometime. Everybody should be doing better than that, right? Those aren't the numbers you want. They're basically getting called to the state principal's office as opposed to doing well. They're not the standards we should be using, and they seem to show up, unfortunately, rather more often for our disadvantaged communities in the school district. It's kind of actually a red flag that we're not doing very well for a group when we start quoting blue, green, red silliness. So please stop. Use the data. The California data is really helpful. I use the California data by hand to identify our disproportionality problems. You can too. Let's use data well so we can do better. I mean, a big part of our reading improvement was to look at the data and start looking at the data at the next level down and then the next level down to figure out what it takes to do better. That's what we need to do for everything. Please use, the LCAP's an important document. It shouldn't be kill the tree, put on a shelf kind of exercise. So let's do better with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with no more comments, I'm going to close the hearing. Doesn't mean the item's done, but I'm going to close the hearing. And now, if anyone has any comments about the LCAP. Oh, there is a presentation. Great. No, let's do that. Let's do that. No, well, the hearing was open. We should take the comments. Okay, now we can have the presentation.
All right, well, thank you for the feedback, regarding the LCAP. So this evening, we're going to be, I will be conducting the public hearing, and this is just part of the finalization and completion of the annual LCAP that we have to conduct every year. So in this slide, these are the different components that are that we have to complete in order to finish the LCAP. It's pretty intensive. There's a lot of us that were involved during this process. There was a lot of collaboration that took place from all the different departments. We conducted ongoing feedback or we were given ongoing feedback from our educational partners, but also we utilized the DAC and the DLAC meetings as well to get some, feedback from our communities, just to make sure that we were, acknowledging all the information they were providing us, but also helping us calibrate during this process. Here's an example in this. So this is the timeline that we use. And again, we started from end of October, conducting our meetings during DLAC, providing the overview of the LCAP, just, giving information as to what we were doing, just to help us, again, calibrate. We conducted classroom presentations. We did a LCAP board report on February 14th, provided this information again with our administration and management, did a PAEA meeting just so we can get, again, our feedback, and get feedback from our teachers as well. And we recently conducted a SELPA consultation just to make sure that, regarding our students with special needs, we were meeting the specific criteria, and we were on track to make sure that we were meeting their needs as well. So here are our three goals. So first goal is high quality education and teaching, high quality teaching and learning, I should say, I'm sorry. Equity and excellence, and wellness and safety. So here are some of the highlights of our goal number one. So ongoing site support on best teaching practices for EL students. The Every Student Read initiative, as presented earlier by Ms. Reynolds, all student groups exceeded the 3% goal. To follow up on that, I know this is our first year, but we have been focusing on secondary. So the secondary reading initiative has been in place, and we look forward to continue to lead up the work that's been conducted at the elementary, but also to continue that obviously with the high school. Usually it's the other way around, but it's been, the elementary have been doing such a great job with this work. Also, our reading and EL specialists collaborated and provided ongoing training for our teachers to support the needs of English learners and students with disabilities. The elementary activity card provided up to or more than 13,000 kits for students. Goal number one, and here are some of the action items for next year. So as mentioned earlier by Ms. Reynolds, again, the fourth and fifth grade teachers will be trained on the OG morphology methodology. The elementary schools will continue to focus on implementing the science-adapted curriculum for TK in fifth grade. Secondary principles and leadership teams will focus on evidence-based gradings to build a common understanding, as it will be part of our continued work for future years. For goal number two, here are some of the highlights. As mentioned earlier in other board meetings, both high schools reached a 95% of participation rate on the CASP, which hasn't been done, I don't think, ever here in our district. Teachers participated in training utilizing the EL toolkit and implemented these strategies on their team teaching in small groups. Also, our EL students maintained their performance level in math in the 2021 CASP assessment that was conducted. Some of the action items for goal number two will be, the implementation of our MTS test platform. It's going to be utilized in all of our school sites. The implementation and continue to implement, I would say, the SWIP plan with the additional goals that are, or adjustments to the goals that have been made. And also our PAUSD counseling team will be utilizing the CCGI platform as a tool for students to get college and career planning information. Goal number three, our wellness. So here are some of the highlights. Elementary school received training on second step SEL, along with some of our middle schools, or all of our middle schools, I would say. Ongoing data review at the school sites to calibrate and enhance support and improve student attendance via our 828 program. The continuity of our music and VAPA after-school sports programs. Action items for goal three, continue to enhance the mental health services and social emotional learning programs. All elementary schools will have a full-time mental health associate at all their sites. And continue tier 3 strategies for student success coaches and SAFE specialists for students with chronic absenteeism. Next steps will be to bring this item back based on feedback that we've received from some of our community members as well, and make adjustments on this document. So we'll bring this back on June 20th for the final adoption, and then we will be presenting it over to the county for their final approval. But last but not least, before, I wanted to make sure we included this. So this is year 2 for us. Next year is going to be year 3. So based on the feedback, we'll be making, again, the adjustments, but also we will be reviewing the 3 goals and make adjustments to them, because we're going to begin next year, being part 3, is going to also be the cycle to create the next 3-year goals for the next 3 years after that. So that'll be a major process where we're going to have be able to provide feedback or get feedback from the community during that process to make adjustments or add additional goals if needed for this, our LCAP.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, Ms. Siegel.
Thank you so much. I read through the whole thing and just had a couple quick clarifying questions. Is evidence-based grading synonymous with standards-based grading?
It is. So
Okay.
it's essentially almost the same, but we're
Okay.
taking an evidence-based approach. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think in addition to evidence-based, standards-based grading, I think a huge key is calibrating the grading across courses, which is part of that. So I just hope the calibration part across the courses is interwoven. And I'm really happy to see improved attendance as a highlight. What stuck out to me reading through the whole packet was that the chronic absenteeism for our historically underrepresented students is still a big concern. Our Pacific Islander was 36%, African American 18%, Hispanic 20%, and our homeless 46.4%. I want to call out the hard work that Herb Espiritu and the site student success coaches and student and family engagement specialists. I know they are all working hard to decrease the number of chronically absent students through working with the families. But I just want to say we still have work to do, and I'm glad that we are continuing to focus on that as a concern. I'm really pleased to see that we're expanding our summer school programs. I think this is great, and the communication has been really clear to families. I think this district did a great job of expressing all the different options, and that there's a continued offering of buses during the summer. I think you did a great job of making that clear so that all of our students have access to our summer learning programs. And my one actual question is the increase of 12 behavioral intervention coaches and our second therapeutic service program, is that included here?
No, not in here.
Okay. That was my, is that included in our budget for next year? Or is that a separate, I'm just trying to
Yeah, we'll be talking about that on the budget item. The LCAP represents less
Okay.
than 1% of our funds for the
Okay.
entire district.
So that will be discussed in a different item.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dart? I don't have any questions. Okay, Ms. Lettermark? Mr. Collins? Okay. Thank you so much for this. The only thought I have as I was looking through the LCAP was that I'm thinking back to my first 2 years that I was on the board, and this was a huge undertaking because you really, as a board member who wasn't in all the LCAP meetings, you never knew what was going to pop up in the LCAP. Like it could be and we'd ask clarifying questions, and what about this, and what about that? And now when I started to dig into it, I was like, oh, here's the promise. Like it flows through everything, right? It's all the same priority goals, and you see them everywhere in every different way. So I was just really excited when I looked at the LCAP. It's like, wow, the same. I could have predicted before I opened it what was going to be in here, and I see the alignment from our stated goals to what we're stating in our LCAP to our SIPs to everything else. It all kind of goes together. So I both appreciate all the work, and I appreciate that it is a predictable document for us now in a lot of ways, and I'm glad to see it kind of align with what our district priorities are. Thank you. And so next time we will see it for adoption. Yes. Great. Thank you. Okay, 7B, which I think probably also has a presentation to it, is also a public hearing, and yet I believe has no comments. So I'm going to open the public hearing for the proposed budget, and then I'm going to, if there's no comments, close the public hearing, and I'm ready to hear the presentation.
As you said earlier, it's only a $300 million item. So, yeah. Okay, I want to turn this over to Ms. Chow, who will walk us through that. And the reason for the sequencing, by the way, LCAP first is the LCAP is a condition for approving a budget that has to be met. So that's why it goes first. In some districts, it's a tremendous amount of their overall budget. In ours, it's a tiny, tiny sliver. But regardless, that's the reason for the order. Ms. Chow?
Thank you, Dr. Austin. This next item is the presentation of the proposed budget for the 23-24 school year. And there is a daunting amount of information attached to the agenda related to this item. Represents months of work, not only from the business department, but from a collaboration of a variety of stakeholders as well as district leaders. Ms. Yu and I will be sharing the highlights of this work. The state budget informs our district budget in several areas, but the state adopts their budget after the district adopts our budget. So for that reason, we use the data from the May revision because it is most current information we have at the time when we're doing our budget development. Any changes in the state's budget between the May revision and when the state, later in June, when the state does adopt their budget, will be addressed at first interim in December. So the May revise was released mid-May. Some of the highlights include the announcement of a state budget shortfall, nearly $32 billion. That is an increase in the shortfall since of about $9.3 million since January when the governor first proposed the budget. The Legislative Analyst Office believes it's actually quite higher for a variety of reasons. The statutory COLA is increased to 8.22%, and one might wonder why, if the state has a shortfall, how they are able to bring forward a historical high of 8.22% COLA. And interestingly, the COLA is not tied to state revenues. It's purely a function of inflation and the CPI. Yeah, also the proposed in the budget is a new equity multiplier. I wanted to just comment on this real quick because of the robust work our district is doing around equity and the fact that it is one of the goals in our promise. This is a different equity multiplier. One would think we were an ideal candidate for this, but these funds are going to schools that have very high poverty levels and over 85% free meals. So it's actually not funds will be coming to PAUSD for this purpose. On the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, this is our ELOP. No new funds in this, but there is some flexibility that was proposed, and expenditures, we get another year in which to use those funds. We have a couple of block grants and some troubling news with these two as it's proposed in the May revised. The Art, Music, Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant has a 51% reduction from the funds that were allocated in this current year. For our district, it's a reduction of $3.2 million if that does end up going forward in the adopted budget. The second area where we're seeing an impact is with the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Here we have a proposed decrease of 32% from our current year budget. What's notable here is that not only is it $1.3 million for the district, but we've already received these funds. So in essence, we are going to have to write a check to the state for this. Now, these are two of the one-time funds from the state. There's also one-time funds from the federal government that are sunsetting, and these would be the ESSER funds. Those funds, just to let the board know that we do not have staff or ongoing expenditures tied to those funds because we're very judicious in how we set up our budgets and not have ongoing funds tied to one-time money. So even though those federal funds are sunsetting, that was planned and it's not going to be cause fiscal distress for the district. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Yu to go over the budget adoption.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Tonight, I will be presenting to you the estimated actuals and projected budget for the upcoming fiscal year 23-24. We have carefully analyzed the financial data and prepared a comprehensive summary to guide us through the next 4 years. To provide an overview, we have prepared 3 slides that illustrate our multi-year projection for revenue, expenses, and the ending fund balance. In the first column of our revenue projection, we have current year's figure adjusted and projected at the year end. The second column represents the proposed budget for the next year and the subsequent 3 years. It is important to note that the total revenue has decreased by $7 million, which translates to a 2.4% decrease from the current year to the next. This decline is primarily attributed to decreases in one-time funds from federal and state, and as well as the local revenue. Under the local revenue, mainly is the donation. Those are budgeted upon receipt. Our projected net property tax is estimated to increase by 3.8%, inclusive of secured, unsecured, and homeowner property tax relief for the next fiscal year, with a consistent 2% increase projected to the subsequent years. As for ongoing federal and state grant, we have budgeted them at a flat rate. We have also included the unspent dollars from one-time funding sources such as the Learning Recovery, Educator Effectiveness Grant, Art Music Instructional Material, and Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. In terms of the local revenue, we anticipate a 3% increase in our lease revenue, a 2% increase in our partial tax, and a 2% increase in our interest as an overall. Now let's move on to the expenditure side. The second slide demonstrated expenditure projection, which also indicate changes between the current and the next fiscal year. The expenditures are projected to increase by $7.5 million, equivalent to a 2.4% increase from the current to the next. The increase is primarily driven by the cost of the certificated and classified staffing and the benefits expenditure. It is worth mentioning that the step and column increases are projected at 2%, and the health welfare expenses are expected to rise by an average of 16% by January 2024. I would like also to acknowledge that our budget is a dynamic document that is based on the information available at the time of its creation. Since then, certain expenses have emerged that are not currently reflected in our budget. First, the district has not yet concluded with negotiation with our employee union, so salary adjustment and associated statutory benefits expenses are not included in our budget at this time. Additionally, we recently received information from our broker about an unforeseen significant increase in our health and welfare cost. This expense was not also accounted for when the budget was finalized. Lastly, we would like also to share the expansion of our school behavioral therapeutic program and transitional kindergarten classes. This initiative aims to provide comprehensive support to our students, which involves additional staffing, from behavior intervention coaches, mental health therapists, therapeutic teacher, additional TK teachers, and instructional aid. And these are not included at the budget at the moment. Considering all of these factors, the general fund budget for 23-24 reflect a decrease in the ending fund balance of $2.3 million, representing a 2.6% decrease. The estimated actuals and projected budget for the next fiscal year present both challenges and opportunities. We are aware of the deficit in the ending fund balances, and we are committed to addressing them proactively. We understand the importance of maintaining a healthy fund balance. Therefore, we will closely monitor and manage expenses to make the necessary adjustment as we see fit. Our goal is to ensure the long-term financial stability of our organization while continuing to provide exceptional education and support to our students. With that, I will turn it back to Ms. Chow.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hughes. So on our multi-year projections, just a quick reminder of what they are and what they are not. As Ms. Hughes mentioned, our budget is dynamic, and probably this year we're seeing no better example of that then we're presenting it to the board, and we already know that we have some revisions to make. So again, I just want to say for the multi-year projections, they are based on the most accurate information we have at the time, and sometimes they change quicker than we anticipate. Next slide, please. What's coming up next? We had a fiscal advisory committee, a very productive meeting last week. Our budget materials have all been available for public review. This is a requirement for the posting of our budget. And on June 15th, this is when the state adopts a budget, and then they go into they analyze, the governor has the option to veto line items, and we really don't know what that state budget looks like until trailer bill language comes out. So while we do say June 15th, it generally is much closer to the end of June when we actually know the true impact on the state budget. And as Dr. Lopez mentioned, this will be coming back along with the LCAP at the June 20th board meeting. And then we will see these revisions, some that we talked about tonight, as well as others, at our December board meeting when we present the first interim to the board. And that concludes the presentation for budget adoption. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's start on this side this time. Mr. Collins.
Thank you for that presentation, very clear. And generally good news, I'd say. You mentioned the thing that I was going to ask about, which was the what people are calling the fiscal cliff with ESSER 3 funds and, in general, COVID relief funds that are coming to an expiration date in, what is it, June of next year, end of fiscal year next year. Giving you guys all some insight into what my life is like, I spent some time today watching the LA Unified School Board meeting. And their reading program was also on the agenda. And it was interesting because in part it was on the agenda because of the item before, which was not the CBO, but the superintendent giving a long presentation about the relatively dire fiscal circumstances that their district faces with the coming of the fiscal cliff for ESSER funds. And the fact that they're going to have to lay off probably thousands of people in LA Unified because they have funded permanent positions with one-time money through the pandemic, while they've seen a dramatic reduction in both overall enrollment and average daily attendance because the chronic absenteeism is way up. So it was startling to see the kind of situation that they are in. In contrast, our situation looks, there was a little bit of red ink on the out-year projections. It looked like something that we were well within what we were capable of managing and called out very clearly and anticipated by our team. So it makes me feel really good about our fiscal situation, and I think we should keep talking about our relative stability and our plan, and that we plan appropriately for to cushion ourselves against fiscal blows, because I think the next few years in California is going to be a very long trail of dire news about layoffs and school closings as the ESSER money runs out and people are and AD and the hold harmless and LCFF runs out and people find themselves having to live with much smaller budgets than they have now. So all that made me feel in contrast, I think our presentation made me feel very positive about our prospects. So thank you for that.
I had a quick question about the local revenues. It seemed like there was a big increase, and now we're going back to. So I saw, it looked like, attachment B said there was a $2 million increase from second interim to estimated actuals, but it looked like our estimated actuals was actually $6 million more than than what's estimated for 23-24. Was that, I mean, I know you explained something about parcel tax and pie, but it didn't seem like it seemed like a lot more money.
Ms. Yu, do you mind going back to that slide on the revenue?
I know, it's like a lot more money.
So what's unique about the local revenue is that in this district, we have very generous parent support. And that support comes to us in terms PTA, general parent donations, as well as, of course, PI. When we receive that revenue, because it's donations, we record it at the time it's received. We don't budget for those funds.
Okay, so it's just not in the budget at all?
It is not in the budget. We add it when it's received.
Okay, that makes sense.
And also another thing I would add to that is because this year we did receive a significant donation to Pali, to their library. So that's also the difference between the 22-23 and to the next fiscal year.
Thank you. And then to clarify, you said that the salaries, so the 11 behaviorists that we're hiring, those aren't included in this adopted budget for, well, for 23-24 that we're adopting right now.
Correct.
So we're adopting it, but, well, next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Dorr.
I was just going to say thank you for answering my question in this section. And when, because this is, my first time doing this, when will that big item be included in the budget? What's kind of the timeline for that?
Right, first interim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for this. Thank you for bringing us through the process all the way along. I think the one thing that's just sort of got my attention, and I did not like run specific numbers, but I saw in the out years, we are using some of our reserves, right, or we're in the red, if you will. And we're in the red in those years while we have not yet counted the behaviorists, and we have not yet talked about raises or any, so it feels like it's probably, granted things may change, but it's probably going to be even bigger, I guess, deficits, you'd say, than that, right? Especially you talked about the increase in benefits, right? The increase in cost of benefits, which probably still has to be negotiated exactly what percentages. But these things are bigger ticket items that are going to make us even tighter, right?
Two things. Our benefits are already pre-negotiated, so we already know what the split is on that.
Oh, great.
So
how come they weren't included in here then, if it's already negotiated?
I'm talking about the percentages when we get the actual number.
Because we don't have the actual number.
That's
Okay.
all in there. The other part, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Ms. Chow, so if we don't know this answer right now, it's okay. I'm just wondering what the additions that we did make that are not included in this budget that will be in first interim, do we have a ballpark number on that again? If not, we can have it at the next meeting.
Well, I could give you a better ballpark figure at the next meeting because I think we also had in question a third grade class as well, so.
Let's just do it then.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that was a discussion item, so thank you so much for the presentation. We look forward to seeing it next time. We are on to information items. We have 8B and 8D that have public comments, so I'll just start with those. 8B is the Mental Health Ad Hoc Committee update. We have 4 commenters: Stephanie Ackers-Wright, Maria DeLorde-Zavala, Stephen Davis, and Akshaya Ardea. So Stephanie, it says in person, but, oh, there she is. Yes. She's like dancing in the aisles down to the, it is like.
I'm awake. Hi, everyone. I know that the topic of mental health, this is a very broad topic. I want to relate how this topic relates to behavior. When we see explosive behaviors in schools, when we see children acting out in unspeakable ways, this is directly related to mental health. And I want to again turn your attention to the collaborative and proactive solutions model of Dr. Ross Green, author of The Explosive Child. He's author of many other books that are available for, I don't know, $30 or less on Amazon each. For mere hundreds of dollars, any person in this room, any teacher in our school district could educate themselves about this model. I can't say what the exact cost it would be to implement this model throughout our district, but I'm pretty sure it's cheaper than the cost of 11 behaviorists that are probably not trained in a proactive model such as this. I just finished a course in positive behavioral supports, and that whole course is focused on what is late. Being late, focusing on observable behaviors is late. Focusing on de-escalation is late. Focusing on coping strategies is late. We need to be early. We need to be talking to these kids. We need to have the skills ourselves to have that conversation of what is getting in their way. What are they stuck on? That is what their behavior is communicating to us. I am stuck. There are expectations that I am having difficulty meeting because I do not have the skills to meet them. We need to be trained in how do we have that conversation, and the collaborative and proactive solutions model provides us with a framework to do that very thing. There are free resources, livesinthebalance.com, countless webinars on YouTube. Please take an hour of your time to look for yourself. I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you very much. Maria Delord Zavala, who might be on Zoom. Okay, Stephen, and then Akshaya.
I was looking at this presentation and it reminded me of the behavioral presentation last week. And we look at these things almost as if they're silos, and they're not. Mental health, behavior, disability, discipline, and the culture of our school district are inseparable from each other. A laundry list of good things to do is not a system, and actually shouldn't be what you all are approving. What, again, I'll get back to, we standing ovation for the reading stuff. Why? Data. What do we not have on where we're at with mental health or behavior? Data. How many kids are getting, MTSS? How many kids are getting into tier 1? How many at tier 2? How many at tier 3? Why didn't we get them at tier 1 or tier 2 when they hit us at tier 3? As you know, I talk to a lot of people about disability matters. And I'm always talking to parents of kids who have more notable dysregulation problems about the ERMS assessment, which wasn't even mentioned. And it's education-related mental health services, but the gateway to that is an assessment, which is one of those things every parent has a right to ask for under IDEA. There's no system we're proposing. We need data, I throw out the data on suspension because it's the only data I can see, but it shouldn't be the only data you can see, and it's showing some severe problems. So I look forward to an actual system of management of problems and not a nice list of things that we probably should be doing, but we need a system to make the things actually better. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last commenter is Akshaya, who it says in person, but I do not see her. Online? Is there a bird?
Hello.
Oh, is that Akshaya? Yes? Great.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm back on. I just wanted to just ask the board if you could provide more, again, back to more trainings for the aides, especially in the classroom as well as teachers, because I've seen instances where the aide clearly needs to understand how different neurotypes work, and because of lack of training, I've seen people holding kids down for doing potty and things that are generally not advised by other people. So I just wanted to understand, like, what's the level of training that the aides classroom, or sorry, the one-on-one aides or the aides who work with the neurodiverse kids get. The other point that I've recently come across is Los Altos Unified has more rigorous training for their classroom aids and other behaviors, and almost to the level of an RBT in some cases. So in comparison, Palo Alto does not. So if you could probably provide that, I think there's a clear correlation between classroom behaviors and especially with our student with disabilities or people nonverbal kids who can't express themselves but need support in the classroom. It's just better to integrate everybody into the classroom environments there. And so, yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board colleagues, any comments or questions about mental health? Can I just ask, was this the end of that group? This is the final report from that group? Okay, and obviously there's a lot going on with mental health in our district. Now that the ad hoc is over, do you just anticipate in the fall, like, what would our next update be? Just, I feel like in the past we've gotten sort of information about our wellness centers and how many people are using them, or, our MTSS progress.
I think mental health, as some of our speakers suggested, shows up all over the place with us. It's one of our 5 priority goals. This is an ad hoc that had a very specific sliver of the problem. So I think to answer your question, part of it, and this is not to be funny, will be solved tomorrow when we start talking about the calendar for next year and we start placing those items.
Okay, thank you. The other information item that has a public comment is D, the evaluation of legal firms, and we have one commenter, Edith Cohen.
Yeah, hi, everyone. So PAUSD is concerned with improving its legal support, and recently PAUSD discriminated against special ed students, refused to discuss it with the impacted family, and now facing a federal investigation by the Office of Civil Rights. PAUSD for years violated laws meant to ensure proper mass placement of students. This resulted in a lawsuit that PAUSD lost. The response is to obfuscate information, double down on their own interpretations of the law, and actively look for the maximum deviations from the intent of the law that they can get away with. So any large organization needs legal support, but when an org lacks transparency and lost the trust of its customer, it needs it more. And when intentionally one is using practices that violate laws that are intended to protect the interests of the customers, they need it even more. And then when the habit is to double down on its practices rather than obey court orders, then it's even worse. So PAUSD needs very good lawyers to defend its practices. And it's also in an enviable position that we, the taxpayers, also pay for, and the customers also pay for all these legal expenses, regardless or not of whether PAUSD wins or loses their cases. So maybe it's time to take a little bit of a different approach, rebuild trust with the community, and operate more transparently. Follow the law when people point out that the practices are unlawful, correct them, make policies that are driven by data and evidence, and be transparent about it so people understand why you're doing things. And also aim to serve all students. Isn't it better than just spending money on more lawyers to defend undefensible practices?
Thank you, Ms. Cohn. Any comments or questions on this? Great, okay. Any other info items that any board members want to comment? Okay, we have board operations, Ms. Siegel.
You just call on me. It is short, but I like to highlight celebrations, and I had the wonderful privilege and honor of attending Fletcher and Gunn's graduation, and even stayed late helping Gunn students check in for the grad night party, as it was wonderful being surrounded by happy students full of joy and optimism about the future. The student speeches were incredible. If there is a place for the community to hear those student speeches, I highly recommend parents find them. For me, they were inspiring. One was humorous, and one was so heartfelt that it brought me to tears. And not only were the student speeches incredible, but I want to give a special shout out here to English teacher Terrence Katata, who received the Principal's Cup at that graduation ceremony for the most honored teacher. I loved listening to the student quotes about him and the other teacher quotes about him. And it was interesting because I turned around and two of the honored teachers on the stage were two of the teachers that inspired me to go into teaching. And so those quotes that the students were saying about the teacher, it matters. These teachers matter. They change lives. And it was just nice to be celebrating students and also celebrating teachers together and being able to witness it. I just felt very fortunate.
Mr. Dart. Okay, I'm going to go since we're going down the line here. Just want to celebrate one particular builder tonight, Kendall Launer, who I think is a teacher on special assignment probably in our high schools. We spent a lot of time tonight talking about ESRI and our elementary school, the progress we've made in elementary school reading. And Ms. Launer is a secondary teacher in our secondary schools who is doing the work of identifying, I mean, she's not the only one, but she's leading that work of identifying and supporting students who maybe went through our system before we had ESRI going and who maybe were not given all the supports they needed to be successful in their literacy lives in high school. And she is using multiple measures to identify which students might benefit from some intervention from iReady and Lexia and midterm exams and school classroom grades, and identifying kids that would benefit or might benefit from a class that they could take that also offers dual enrollment. And I'm just really excited that we have got staff members who are identifying those holes of, those places of need and filling them and going above and beyond to just do whatever is necessary to try to fill them. So I want to recognize her. And the graduations were wonderful. I went to JLS and Pali. We got to recognize students. We got to recognize retiring staff. And they were just wonderful celebrations. Nope. All right. Well, 9:51. This meeting is adjourned.